Hey folks, welcome back to Swift on Sundays. My name is Paul Hudson, and this used to be a weekly stream. We'd cover lots of code in one real project every week in about an hour, hour and a half. There was a massive break at WWDC because obviously lots of new things got announced. I ran my own conference, I had some holidays, even I get vacation. But we're back now with another new project, and this time we're looking intensively at SwiftUI. Lots and lots of folks have been asking me questions about SwiftUI by email, by Twitter, on Slack, all over the place. I know you folks have lots of questions about SwiftUI, and I figured the best way to kind of answer that would be to dive in with some code. And I actually ran so my dog's coming up already. Dogs, you hear me recording? I did a presentation. Hello, darling. I did a presentation in New York at Try Swift 10 days ago. I lost track already. A week ago? I've forgotten. Recently. And it was called SwiftUI in 25 minutes. And I did my my test run for that and ended up with an hour and 20 minutes. So I was way over budget on time. So I kind of cut it and 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 cut it to get it down to the right length. And what you're going to see today is effectively the director's cut of my Try Swift talk. Like what I would have delivered if I'd had way more time. So we're going to go into stacks of detail about SwiftUI. We're going to look at, Midnight Mist's giving you some money already for a treat. Okay, you can get a treat. Come on, good girl. There you go. The super chats get dog treats, by the way. If you're new at SwiftUI Sundays. Anyway, we're going to go to stacks detail, right? We're going to look at building navigation, building lists, building buttons, building state. We're going to look at iOS apps. We'll look at macOS with Catalyst. Look at native macOS with SwiftUI using AppKit. We're going to look at a huge range of stuff, including core data. It's a serious application. It's a real thing with lots to dive into. So that's hopefully a really good project to help you learn about SwiftUI in a really practical way. If you're new to Swift on Sundays, we haven't got very many rules. In fact, there are only really a handful we care about. Firstly, I have a zero tolerance for harassment. So if you see any abuse in the chat, you get like an instant ban. You'll be out. No questions asked. Second, if you have on-topic questions, like questions about what I'm doing right now, please ask in the chat window, and I'll get them answered straight away. If you have off-topic questions, should I learn UI kit or SwiftUI? My sprite kit game's broken, whatever it is, leave those to the end, otherwise it's really hard to follow along. Those are the rules. I should say the code for this will be on GitHub when we're finished. So you haven't got to worry about trying to keep up if you don't want to. It'll all be on GitHub ultimately. So that's it. Now, I should remind you, by the way, I'm running Catalina Beta 8. So this might completely catch fire. I did a test run earlier this week, a few days ago, and did like a screen share, did like a screen cam, did both at the same time, just to make sure it worked. And it all worked correctly. There were no problems. So I'm hoping today, with all you folks here, it's not going to catch fire. But I've warned you ahead of time. It's beta software, right? Get used to it. Anyway, with that, I kind of want to dive into the project because we haven't got much time and we've got a lot to cover. So I'm going to try, this is the risky bit, this is the bit that might catch fire. If it's going to happen, it'll happen now. I'm going to try and switch across to screen sharing mode, like that. Boom. And we're still live. Awesome. So, as you can see on my screen, I have the chat window here, up here. I'll make it nice and big so you can see what's going on. I have Xcode 11, the finished shipping version of the Mac App Store. You will need that if you want to follow along in SwiftUI. You don't have to have Catalina. If you want to have those live previews in the corner of your screen, you've got to have Catalina. If you don't mind that, you can have Mojave and just press Command R or a lot to run the app in a simulator. Either one works. You do not have to have Catalina to follow along. Oh, I should mention, by the way, if you want to learn SwiftUI properly, I'm running a new course, the 100 Days of SwiftUI. It's free online at hackingwithswift.com/100/SwiftUI. Go and check that out. Anyway, so there's my Xcode window there, and I'm going to go ahead and press Create a New Xcode Project. And from this list, I will make this window a little bit bigger so we can see what's going on, like that. Boom. And I'm going to choose iOS single view app, and then I'll call this thing Dad Jokes. That's the app we're going to make, an app to track dad jokes. It's hilarious dad jokes, of course. Make sure you choose SwiftUI for your user interface and not Storyboard, otherwise you'll be very confused indeed. And for here, I'm going to check the box saying use core data. So we get core data stuff enabled automatically for our application. So I'll press next and then save to my desktop. And here's where we find out if Catalina is going to play ball. I will press resume to have it build and run my code in the live previews right inside Xcode. And we'll know very quickly if Catalina is going to be happy or not, because you never quite know with Catalina at this point, sadly. That's all right. It'll be final soon. It's thinking very slowly. There we go. It's getting close. Okay, boom. There is our live preview, and it's brilliant. This whole thing is super live. So we can just change text in here and say, you know, not hello world, but goodbye world, whatever, and boom, it updates live as you do it. It's really, really interactive. Again, if you have not got Catalina, just press Command R to build and run your code regularly. You get the same effect. Anyway, you can see here we have text hello world, a simple label on there saying hello world. Rick, that's very kind of you. Thank you very much. That's a number of dog treats. We have hello world as a label on there, which is pretty boring, of course. You don't want one label. We want to have a collection of labels. So I'm going to say this text thing here is wrapped inside a list. Yeah, the hum might be my laptop, which is currently fans on 100% because it's doing OBS, it's doing live streaming Catalina, it's doing Keynote as well. It might be that, if I had to guess. Yeah, this one runs hot. I cannot wait till they change the laptops. Anyway, so you can see now we have a list of stuff saying hello world, hello world, hello world. And this is now inside effectively a UI table view. Now, it might not be a UI table view in the future, but it certainly is right now. That's all it is. It's a UI table view. It works exactly the same way. So you can pull it around, you can tap on cells and so forth. It works just like a table view, effectively. And you'll see this is basically a static table view. We have 3 text views in there, hello world, hello world, hello world. Just stacks them up one per row. So it's really easy to do these fixed style storyboards, which just look right and with custom cells everywhere you want to, not dynamic. Of course, if you want dynamic, which is you nearly always will want, you've got to start by defining what your data is. In our case, this is the Dad Jokes app. So I'll say before our content view, there is a new struct called joke. A dad joke, a single joke struct. And each joke has a setup string and a punchline string and a rating string. 3 things like that. And now to begin with, we're just going to go ahead and hard code some data to work with. So we'll say in our content view here, we have an array of jokes to work with in our table. And the first one, I should say, brace yourself. There are some very bad dad jokes in here. So, you've been warned ahead of time. Disconnect from the live stream now if you hate dad jokes. Anyway, that joke equals, I'll say joke. And the setup's going to be, what's a cow's favorite place? Of course, the answer is a museum. And the rating for that, I'm going to rate these things between a number of possibilities. And in dad jokes, no one really laughs at dad jokes. You either get things like, sobbing, terrible dad joke. You get silence, you get a heavy sigh. And if you're lucky, if you're very giving children, you might get a smirk. Those are the ratings I'm going to use. Sob, silence, sigh, or smirk. So for a rating for this one's okay. I'll say silence. That's the rating for this one. And then for our next joke, we'll say the joke setup is what's brown and sticky? The answer is a stick. Rating of that one is sigh. And we'll do one more. A joke using the setup. What's orange and sounds like a parrot? Punchline is a carrot. Rating is smirk. Quite a good one, that one. So there's our sort of hard-coded jokes we want to work with. And what we really want to do is say inside this list, make one cell for each one of those jokes. So rather than having text by hand, text, we want to say loop over all the items in that jokes array and create one row from that one. Joey, that's a great joke. Sleeveys, that's a great joke. I could use that one. There's time for that one perhaps. Anyway, we're going to say, go ahead and use for each here. So I'll say for each jokes Oh, jokes even, not hoax. Jokes. And this time I'm going to tell this thing to loop over it by one joke at a time and give me each joke individually and write that into the setup here. Like that. Write it into the text. So for entire list, go over every joke and make one cell for each joke with that setup inside. So it'll say, what's Cow's favorite place, what's brown and sticky, and what's orange and sound like a parrot. And when I press Command B to build the code, you'll see it's very unhappy. It's saying, la la la, cannot convert value of type whatever to closure.type underscore, which is a great useless error message. Arturo says, can we access this video later on? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. The real error is down here. Referencing initializer, this thing requires that joke conform to identifiable. Now over here I have Keynote running with some slides. I want to walk you through this real quick. That might help explain what's going on here. So you can see we have an array of jokes like this. And there's loads of them. There's 5 here, or 10, or 100, whatever it is. And when we finally delete one of those things, how does SwiftUI know which one was deleted? Was it what's brown and sticky? Was it what's a Cow's favorite place? How does it know to identify each joke uniquely? Now our joke struct looks like this. Struct joke, var setup string, punchline string, and rating string. That's the data we have. And in Swift 5.1, there's actually a new protocol called identifiable. We can say this thing conforms to identifiable, and that has only one requirement, which is that there must be a property called ID. Some sort of thing that IDs this object uniquely. And you can see here I'm saying give every joke a unique universal identifier, a UUID, randomly every single time, so it's uniquely done. So when we delete one thing, it'll be pretty clear what was deleted. In this case though, we're not going to do that because our setup is unique. Right? That what's brown and sticky, or what's orange sounds like a parrot, or a carrot, sorry, and the other one, Cow's favorite place, they're all unique. They're all unique already. You're not going to have the same joke in there twice. So we can actually use that setup as our unique identifier. We can say, look at that thing, it will be unique guaranteed. And if we're wrong, well, we're wrong, that's our fault. So let's try and not be wrong. So back in Xcode, question from Magnus. Why do I use a list for each jokes where you can just do list jokes? So what he's saying is, in this instance, we can actually have just written for list jokes like that and ditched the for each entirely. That's intentional, Magnus, and you'll see why later on. I don't want to spoil the fun too much. Anyway, so we're going to go and loop over things here, and for each joke here, we'll say its identifier. The thing that makes this joke unique is \setup. That's what's unique about it. And with that, we can now build the code, hopefully. No, it's still happy. I've got list jokes here, with my mistake. Get rid of that code still. Boom. Boom. You now build the code. Okay, so now it's happy with the code. It understands how to build the code, so it'll use that setup as being a unique identifier every single time. So, if we resume the preview again, it should be happier. Doing a little build. There we go. So it's now listing out things nicely as you would expect. Smilebot asks, if it was a UID, wouldn't it reset this every time you update the struct's properties? It resets it when you recreate the struct. So for every time you create a struct, it'll be new every time. In this case, though, it's okay because the structs are made once and never used again, like never recreated again, so it's fine. Well, Robert, it is a property. That is, it's pointing to a property. Robert's asking why we're using a key path here instead of a property. Well, that is a property. We're saying read that property from our thing. That's all we're doing. We're not using the property directly because we're saying it's like an indirect reference. Here's where you look for the identifier, not specifically 1, 2, 3, but that whatever is there for this individual joke. Anyway, so there is our simple layout stuff. What we're going to do next is enhance it a little bit. We're going to show the rating next to it. Is it silent, size, smirk, or sob? And one of the cool things SwiftUI does is it makes it very easy to compose views. To build lots of small views that do 1 or 2 small things, then bring them together, like Lego bricks to make bigger and bigger views. And in this case, we're going to represent the rating for a joke using an emoji. So I'm going to press Command N to make a new file in Xcode. I'll choose SwiftUI view. I'll name this thing emoji view. Like that. Emoji view. And this thing right now has just a simple hello world text like our previous view. So Javier asks, why do they see \self? What's the difference? So when you say self, you're referring to the whole object makes it unique. So for example, in our previous file, we had a list of jokes using setup. If we had an array of strings here, or an array of integers, or an array of doubles, whatever it happens to be, right? We can't just say, hey, \dot what? I mean, what do you write? There's nothing you can write in there. \dot self means the thing itself, that individual string in the array is what makes it unique. That individual number makes it unique. And it's down to you to make sure you don't repeat strings and numbers. So it's a way of referring to things like the whole thing itself is what identifies it. Anyway, so we have our emoji view here. And this thing is going to take as its property, a rating string. Sob, sigh, silence, or smirk. And inside its body, we're going to decide what to show based on the value of that rating. We're going to say switch on rating. Inside there, we'll say, well, if we have the rating sob, we will return a text with the emoji. And I'm going to try and bring up the emoji menu here and fail. There we go. Boom. Sob is that one. Put that. That's our emoji goes back if we have sob. If we are sigh, I will return a text using the emoji. Which one looks like a sigh? That's a sigh there. Look at that. Yes. What's that official one called? You're called a sad, pensive face. Boom. One of those. If we have smirk, we will return text of smirk emoji. Like a little sort of half smile kind of thing. Oh yeah, there we go. What's that? Smirking face. Perfect. Boom. And then default, i.e. all other values, which is in this case silence, but we don't know that because it's a string. We're going to return back sort of like a straight, unamused face. Which one here looks unamused? There we go. Look at that. That is singularly. That's the face of my kids pull when I do dad jokes. There we go. Anyway, so that is the various emoji we can have inside our emoji view. And one thing I kind of often do when I'm being super lazy is make a custom initializer. Now this is a struct, right? The struct, you can just do emoji view rating, some rating. Often when I want my code to read more naturally, I'll do a custom initializer for my emoji, even though it has one in the member-wise one already. So I'll say in this case, init for rating string self.rating equals rating. And now you get a much nicer initializer for the emoji views. Anyway, so that code is all valid code. This is all good Swift code, right? But if I press Command B to build my code, it ain't gonna work. Because down here, it's saying, well, this thing here is Xcode's preview provider, the thing that's drawn this thing on the right. And it tries to create a new emoji view with no parameters. It doesn't know what emoji view to create. So to make this code compile, we've got to tell it for our preview purposes, like for a quick demo purpose over here, we want to make an emoji view for the emoji. I'm going to use sob. Like that, sob. And now when I press Command B, it should build the code correctly. Folks, I know you really want me to use enums. There's a particular reason I have chosen ahead of time not to use enums. It's all going to call data shortly. It's done for a reason, trust me. I'll press resume over here, and it should show us that little sob emoji here on the right. There it is, tiny, tiny, tiny little thing. I'll zoom in slightly. There we go. There's our sob preview working nicely inside the canvas on the right. Okay, so we can now use that inside our content view, our new emoji view, using that whole composition thing. So you can see we have our list, our table of stuff. For each joke, make a row. And the row right now is just some text. What we want to do really is say not just text, but also the emoji view for joke.rating. Rating, like that. show me the correct emoji for this joke. Now press Command B again. And it's giving us a wonderful Swift error message. Hello dogs. Yes, you do get a treat because some folks are giving you a lot of money. It's very, very kind of them. Thank you so much, folks. Come here. Come on, come here. There you go. People like you very much. Yes. This one's Aria, by the way. Luna's, I don't know, missing out somewhere. Missing out on the big treat somewhere else. Silly dog. Anyway, we're now getting an error on line 26. It's saying that type underscore has no member setup. This is a brilliant, brilliant bad error message in Swift. What it means is that we've made a mistake somewhere else in our SwiftUI code, and Swift isn't quite sure where, so it's kind of throwing up this other error message, which in this case is utterly misleading. That code was fine before, and now it's not. What it means is that SwiftUI likes to know what you plan to return from stuff, and it will either like to have one thing or an error. That's it. Those are your options. You either return something or you don't even bother trying. You can't return 2 things or 5 things or 10 things, whatever you want to. It doesn't like that. It likes to be very specific what you return. And so in this case, we're trying to say 2 things for our table view row. And it's making it very, very unhappy. What it really wants in this case is, listen, you had your treat, clear off. What it really wants in this case is a H stack. To wrap our emoji view and our text view in a horizontal stack, side by side, left and right. Now if I build again, it'll take a little while because my laptop is literally maxing out the CPU, but it builds cleanly. So the error it was pointing out about /.setup was irrelevant. That's not the error at all. It was having a bit of a laugh. What it really meant is inside the for each, you're giving me 2 things. I don't know what to do with that. I don't understand what to do with that. Anyway, now it's done. I can press try again, and it should hopefully show us our emoji and text. In the meantime, Shingatsu88 asks, why is there a need for an init? Because in that case, I really like writing emoji view for joke rating. It reads much more naturally to me. Again, like I said, it's not required. You don't have to do that. But in this case, I find it reads more clearly than having emoji view rating joke.rating. It's not as nice. Anyway, so now we have, on our preview here, as you can see, boom, we have our emoji and our setup side by side in the preview, which is what we hoped for in the first place. Now I'm trying to keep track in my little keynote somewhere, where did that go, of where we're up to. And you've just seen H stacks, things going left to right. And H, of course, is horizontal. It puts one thing on the left, the next into the right, next into the right, and so forth along the way. There's also V stacks, vertical stacks. They do the same thing, just going vertically. And Z or Z stacks for doing zepth or depth. We want to place one thing over another thing. And we're going to be using all of these things in this project. So those are the 3 ways we do stuff: horizontal, vertical, and Z stack. And wonderfully, they all do really great things for accessibility. Because when we say this thing comes first, horizontally or vertically or whatever, then this thing, it makes it really easy for the screen reader to say, aha, there's my priority. There's the order in which I read things. Whereas in auto layout days for UIKit, we just put things around the screen with constraints and so forth, and they look like in the right place in the screen, but wasn't necessarily the correct flowing order. You could put them all over the place if you chose to. SwiftUI gives you a lot of great accessibility functionality free of charge. Anyway, so that takes us through the first step. We've got a table view, right? That is our thing there. That's our table view. We're done. The next step is we're going to do navigation. So you can actually see the punchlines for your jokes, right? Because just seeing what's brown and sticky is nowhere near hilarious enough, right? You want to see the actual punchline, a stick. And in SwiftUI, the tool for that is called a navigation view. It's a sort of a combination of, in UIKit terms, a UI navigation controller and UI navigation bar at the same time, all in one control, called a navigation view. And we place it around our list like that. And then push the list inside the navigation view. So it'll all be inside there. And you'll see immediately this big white space appears at the top above my table. And that is just like an iOS, right? That's our navigation bar where we put a title and so forth. I mean, we can do that now. We can say, you know, our list here has the navigation bar title of dad jokes. Although in this case, we can go doubly meta because it's a great dad joke. Why do dads tell dad jokes? Because they want to see their kids all grown up. So I'm going to call our app All Grown Up, like that. That's very kind. Thank you very much, Sean. So you can see now, we've put this title above our list. We automatically get the iOS chunky navigation bar style because SwiftUI by default gives us these smart defaults. We haven't got to enable these things like you'd have to do in UIKit, enable this thing, enable that thing, and so forth. You get smart defaults as standard, which is super nice in SwiftUI. So one thing folks get confused with when they see this code, I'll head back to Keynote for a second, is they see this code here. We have a navigation view, then a list, then some stuff, and then we append navigation bar title to the list. And they kind of expect, actually, that line of code shouldn't be there, it should be there. Like, what's it modifying? And this, I ask folks normally to think about this in terms of UIKit. Because in UIKit, would never do that. In UIKit, if you think about UIKit, we'd say, I have a navigation controller here, and a view controller inside the navigation controller, and the view controller has a title of title A, right there. And that title A in that view controller actually gets moved up to the navigation controller. It gets bubbled upwards. We assign it to the local view controller, it bubbles upwards to the navigation controller. And when we show title B and view controller B, that goes up. And view C, that goes up, and so forth. So we attach these things not to the navigation controller, but the thing inside the navigation controller, so that iOS can move it around freely, panning in, panning out, animating beautifully. That's how it works. And the same's absolutely identical on SwiftUI. We don't attach title to the navigation view, but to the custom view inside it. And that way it'll animate in and out freely as it needs to with SwiftUI. So that's why our line goes there. Now, what we want to do, of course, is show our hilarious punchline when someone taps one of these rows. What's brown and sticky? A stick, right? And this is done in SwiftUI using a type called navigation link. You give this thing a destination. What do you want to show? What screen do you want to show? And then you give it some content. What should be tappable? What do you want to be enabled to be tapped in your navigation? In our case, we're actually going to make this whole HStack, replace that whole thing with a navigation link. And we'll say your destination is going to be the text of our joke's punchline, like that. Go straight to the punchline from our navigation link, like that. Now, when I run the code, I want you to see three things that really stand out here as being awesome from SwiftUI. So I run this thing back in the simulator when I have a drink. Let's launch up iPhone 11 Pro Max. Hurrah. Okay. What questions do we have so far? Are SwiftUI and Flutter similar to some extent? Yes, they are similar to an extent. Of course they are. They are similar in intent. I expect SwiftUI is going to last longer, but we'll see on that one. Okay, so hopefully it's launching our app in the simulator. Boom, there we go. So I want you to point out a few things here. First, notice we have a HStack here. Right? We've got the emoji and our text side by side, but there's no HStack in our code. So I've removed the HStack, but it still understands what to do. Now, this is one of those things that SwiftUI does for us in some places, like highly selectively, automatically. What you're seeing here is called an implicit stack, a stack that was not specifically designed by us, not put in place by us, but SwiftUI assumes must happen here because it's the only logical choice. It looks at this and says, well, you've got a table view, you've got a tappable thing inside it, that must mean it's table view cell, and table view cells in iOS, you've got two things, it's going to be a picture on the left, thing on the right. So it kind of creates an instant immediate H stack for you, which you haven't asked for, you just get one free of charge, an implicit stack. The second thing I want you to notice is we've added these gray disclosure indicators. Again, we didn't ask for them. SwiftUI spotted we've got a table which is pushing a new view somewhere else when a cell's tapped. Therefore, the correct UI thing to do is to show a disclosure indicator. So it's intelligent here. And it'll adapt. You know, on iPad, if you have a split view controller, you aren't pushing and popping screens with it. You're just showing different detail screens. It won't have those gray disclosure indicators. So it does it intelligently based on what it thinks you need. I think most important of all is, notice that when I tap on one of these rows, in slides a museum or in slides a stick, we have literally pushed to some text. Now, our destination wasn't a new view controller, wasn't a whole custom new view, it was just some text, or just some image, or just a H stack, whatever you want to. You can push to tiny bits of things, which means when you're doing prototyping, you can work extremely quickly in SwiftUI to build applications without having to do fill long designs of stuff. Because you can just do push some text, push some image, whatever it is. It's very, very fast doing prototyping. So as you can see, the app is kind of coming together a little bit, and it's obviously not an exciting application, but we have titles, we have navigation, we have emoji and so forth, and we have a detail screen, all in, honestly, not a lot of code. A lot of that is basically us typing in jokes and stuff, and emoji switches and so forth. Anyway, that gets us through navigation. Next up is core data. I'll briefly just address Dennis White's question, what would happen if you added the H stack? That's fine, you can totally be explicit. If you want to tell it exactly what you want to do, you can. But in this case, you can also rely on implicit stacking. Now, it still creates a stack for you, it still happens, there's no performance difference, so either one is fine. Realistically, do whatever works best for you. I prefer to rely on the system sort of enhancements for me. You don't have to do that, whatever works well for you. Text image are indeed views, but they are magic views. You know, if you think about the way SwiftUI works, if you look at our code, here, you can see that our content view is a view. So everything is a view, and if everything's a view, you've got this kind of chain of stuff. This thing has text inside it. What does text have inside it? You know, and so forth. You can end up with a big long chain of stuff, and where does it actually end? You know, and it doesn't end. But text and image and the other raw types of SwiftUI are actually special primitive views that are the end point of all our views ultimately. You know, shapes, colors, gradients, images, text, and so forth are these collection of primitive SwiftUI views that are the ultimate endpoints of all our views. But obviously, we create bigger ones that are composites of those types. Anyway, next up, I want to look at core data because we've hard-coded some hilarious jokes in here and so forth, but that's not good enough. You want actual dynamic data the user can interact with and modify and have control over. Now, when I made this project, if you remember, I did select the core data template for single view app in iOS. And what that means is we have this XC data model D file, a core data definition of stuff we can define for our database. ATR CR95, I've answered that online already in big detail. The answer is you need both SwiftUI and UIKit. There's no easy way around it at this point. Anyway, this thing is our data model for our application. All the database we want to store, what tables we have, what attributes we have, and so forth, need to be listed in there. And in this case, we're going to replace our hard-coded joke struct with a core data entity called joke. So I'll say add entity, and I'll name this entity joke. And attributes are things that define it, in this case properties, just like in our struct. And I'll say this thing has the same attributes that our struct had. So I'll add one called setup, and this thing is a string. Then I'll add another one called punchline, and I'll make this thing also a string. Then I'll add one more, which is a rating, and this thing is also a string. So now you can see why I wasn't using enums. You know, Swift enums are brilliant. They don't play well with core data. Anyway, by default, Xcode likes to do a thing called code gen. It will generate some code for you. When you press Command B, it'll make some code on the fly for you. And that might work fine some of the time. Here though, we'll take a shortcut. I'm going to say I want no code gen from Xcode. And instead, I'm going to make this thing by hand using this option here under editor, create NS managed object subclass. Give us an actual class we can work with and modify in our code. So I'll press create NS managed object subclass, choose dad jokes, yes. Choose our new joke entity, yes. Go into the dad jokes folder, go into the dad jokes group, and press create. And it creates the code to represent that class we just defined. Here's setup string, punchline string, and rating string. But they're all marked with a special attribute @NSManaged, which means this thing is special. It's being managed by core data for us. It'll come from somewhere else and it'll go to somewhere else. It's not a simple Swift struct. Anyway, the reason I've made the class physically in front of us like this because you really don't want to have to work with optionals everywhere. Core data likes optionals very much, and they're not. Like, it has an idea of optional that's not the same as Swift's optional. It can get awfully confusing. So really what you want to do is make your class like this and add wrappers around it to make things non-optional. You know, non-optional setup, non-optional punchline, non-optional rating. So you can read them safely. It is very common, I'm going to do it here because I'm time limited, to just remove the optionality like that and say this thing really is required. And that's fine. I mean, I believe it causes problems with faulting in core data, so it's not really a good idea for serious applications, but for demos like this, it's going to be fine. Anyway, so I've made those three things non-optional here. And so what we can do is back in our content view, let's get rid of some space first. I can delete this joke struct. We don't need that anymore. We've got our joke class, which is an NS managed object subclass. That's the core data thing we just made. So I'll delete that thing there. And similarly, I'm going to delete this whole hard-coded jokes array. We don't have to have that either. We don't want hard-coded jokes anymore. We want dynamic jokes being loaded from core data. And in its place, I'm going to say, give me some data from core data, please. Load stuff from the database. Give me all the jokes. And in core data, the way of doing that is called an NS fetch request. Ask for some data, please. Ask for it here. And to do that in SwiftUI, we use a special property wrapper called @fetchRequest. Make a core data request for data here. And this takes a few properties. The first one is, which entity do you want to load? In our case, that is joke.entity. Load our joke table, like that. The second one is, how do you want your data to be sorted? And we could just say, I don't care. Just don't sort them. Just give them the order they were added. But for demo purposes here, I'm going to actually provide a sort descriptor here. I'm going to say we want to sort based on an NS sort descriptor. Descriptor, there we go. I'm going to provide the key path is going to be \joke.setup. Sort by the setup string of our jokes. And ascending, I'm going to say true. So we get the alphabetic sorting of that array. Then we give it a name. I'll call it jokes, like our previous array. Oops, Daisy, you shouldn't be in there. You should be after there, like that. For our jokes, type is a fetched results of joke, like that. Boom. So load our jokes array from core data like that. Okay, and sort by setup. So what we're saying here is query the core database. Just show us all straight away, all the jokes, sorted by setup line directly into that array jokes. I'm already using the array jokes here, so it should show all our jokes in our table. I'll press Command R to build and run our code again. And now you see it's empty. Now this is correct, I'm not screwing up here. It's empty because, of course, we have a database that's empty. There are no jokes to show in there. But you might wonder, how the heck does it know where the database is? Like, what is @fetchRequest doing here? And the answer is, the Xcode template's written quite a bit of code for us behind the scenes, like about 20-ish lines of code to make that work. And it kicks off with, in our app delegate, they create an instance of an NS persistent container. That's the main core data object for loading databases. And look for a thing called dad jokes, which matches the name of our data model over here. So it'll say, okay, give me a database called dad jokes, load it now. And it'll do so. So it loads it in the app delegate when the application first launches. And then in the scene delegate, when an individual scene appears, that's a window in like iPad OS land. In the scene delegate, there's a bit of hacksawing. You'll see it reaches up to the app delegate to read its core data container and grabs its managed object context. That's core data lingo for where all the objects live, where I can read and write and delete and modify stuff freely. It reads that context. And here on line 27, it injects that context into the environment for our content view. It'll say, okay, anyone who wants to use core data, badoom, here you go. Here's your context to read and write data freely. And so when we say at fetch request stuff, it'll understand, okay, I'll look in the environment to get my context from there and use that database connection for all my queries. My reading and writing comes from there. So that's how it at fetch request managed to do almost nothing, like one line of code, boom, we get things working quite nicely. So it works well. Of course, we now have got a problem, right? We now can't see any jokes. Our application isn't very good anymore because we've deleted our hard-coded jokes array and we're now down to just core data. So the next step is to add a way for users to create their own jokes, an add screen. So back in Xcode again, Joey, thank you very much, it's very kind. Back in Xcode again, I'll press Command N, make another new file, and I'll call this thing a SwiftUI view. Next, and I'll call this thing add view. Add view. Like that. Now this add view needs to be able to read that managed object context to save it. Because in core data you say, create a new object, a new joke object inside this context, do your work, and then save the context. So the first thing I'm going to say is read our managed object context from the environment, the one that was passed in by the scene delegate. So I'll say at environment, that's another SwiftUI property wrapper. It means read something from the environment. As for what we want to read, we're going to say /dot the managed object context, like that. Read our core data managed object context from the environment so we can use it locally. And locally, I'm going to call that thing mock, M-O-C, managed object context. So we can now refer to that context whenever we want to. We can create new jokes, we can save the context, we can delete jokes, all we want to, using that context. And that's the one that came from the app delegate ultimately. We also want to have some properties in here to handle the data for our joke. What is the setup string? What is the punchline string? What's the rating string? So we'll say setup by default is an empty string. Punchline by default, that's also an empty string. And ratings by default, that's a string. I'll do silence by default. So those are strings we want to work with for a default joke before someone edits them. We're going to add one more property here, which is the other possible ratings. Because there are 4 ratings, right? Sob, sigh, silence, and smirk. I want to show those in a little picker for folks to choose from. So I'm going to say, let ratings equals an array of sob, sigh, silence, and smirk. Like that. Boom. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and write some code in our body for this add view. I'm going to say, first up, we have a navigation view. We get a bar at the top, a grey bar, standard sort of UI kit behavior. Inside there is a table of stuff. And this time I'm going to use sections to make a clear visual divider on the screen. So we have a section. In our first section will be a text field. What is your setup? So I'll say text field. The string is setup. The placeholder string is. Good point, Javier. Sorry. let rating equals silent, let ratings equals an array of that stuff. My mistake, thank you very much, Javi, for catching that, well done. Text field setup, and I'm going to attach this thing to setup. So show the text from our setup property in that text field. Then text field, punchline. That's the placeholder. I attach this one to our punchline. Let me hide this left-hand bar, getting a bit short in space here. There we go. And our third control is going to be a picker, using rating, and for selection, going to be attached to rating. And for the picker, we want to show the various options, subsci, silence, or smirk. So I'll say for each of our ratings, and this time we have a string array. So we can't say for our ID, ID will be some value from a struct. Sob itself is the unique identifier. The value itself is the identifier. So in this case, we've got to say \dot self, like that. Pass the rating in so we can work with it and just write text that rating. Boom. Then after that section, I'm going to add another control. So when they're finished, we can add something here. Ajinkya Sonar asks for a video subscription. Sounds great. If you want to send me more money, I'm happy to take your money. Anyway, after our section there with our controls, I'm going to add a button so they can add the joke when they're ready. So I'm going to say there's a button with the text add joke. And the action for this is going to create a new joke instance. Now remember, this is not a struct anymore. This is a core data NS managed object subclass. And they're created in a very special way, as you'll see. We'll say let new joke equals a joke. And this thing has a parameter called context. Where should this be saved? What database are we working with here? In our case, we can just say, actually, it's that mock property we made earlier. This thing up here, our manage object context, the one we got from the environment. Use that for our context here. Now we can copy across all our properties into that joke. We'll say new joke dot setup equals self dot setup, our setup string. New joke dot punchline is our punchline string, Then new joke dot rating is our rating string. So copy all the data across into that new object. And finally, once we're done, we want to save the manage object context. We're done, write everything out. And this is done as a specific call to a save method on the manage object context. Because ideally you want to make lots of changes up front, write everything, and save in one big sort of flush, as opposed to doing many small writes. In this case, you might write, do try self.manage, mock.save, and then catch. Obviously add your error here. I'm not going to do an error for you, you can do it yourself. Print, whoops, and then we'll just do error.localize description. Obviously add some sort of meaningful error catching in there. MOC is just short for managed object context. It is a thing that core data passes us, smart dog, telling us here's your actual live data you work with. As you add things or delete things or insert things into there, it's really happening in that core data backing store, an SQLite database or whatever it happens to be behind the scenes. Anyway, so that's our add joke thing there. At the end of our list down here, I'm going to add a navigation bar title saying new joke. Boom, like that. Thracian asks, do you need weak self in the button closure? So this whole thing, Thracian, is actually a struct. And structs have no chance of being stuck in a retain cycle. They can't. They only have one owner ever. So no, you don't have to have weak self in there. And I don't know how it would work. Like in my head, in my brain, I would love to see Swift be smart enough not to have self absolutely everywhere, because so many things in SwiftUI are closure based and mostly inside structs. Therefore, the chance of retain cycle is possible. It can't happen. So I'd love for them to say, actually, you don't need self here. It's fine. I suspect there are 1,000 technical reasons why that's not possible, but I can dream, right? I can dream. Anyway, we've added the title here for our list, and I'm going to go ahead and press Command B to build this code. I'm going to see errors here. Up here we have an error saying this thing cannot convert type of string to expected argument type binding string. Now, let's head back to Keynote for 1 second. What we're seeing here is core data has been passed in. Great. It comes from the app delegate down the way and down the way. And that's really nice because of the environment. If you think about the way we did things in UIKit, we have to pass core data around by hand again, which is very confusing. And what SwiftUI lets us do is put it once into the environment, skip things out, and then read it out when we're ready, like that, which is really nice. But we have an error. We're trying to read the setup string inside our text field. And SwiftUI is really unhappy. Well, Swift's really unhappy. Because, yes, it can show a text in the text field. It's like doing in UIKit, some text field .text equals hello world. You can do that, of course you can. What we want to happen is, when we write stuff into the text field, it should update setup as well. So it's not a one-way binding. The data has to go 2 ways. It'll read the value and also write it back out again. And what's going to make that happen is we've got to modify our setup string. Now, if you remember, our setup string here is inside our add view, and our add view is a struct. You can't modify properties in structs. It's not allowed. As you explicitly have a mutating method, and this is not mutating, it's a property. So we cannot mutate things here at all. It is impossible. SwiftUI does not allow you to do it. Swift does not allow you to do it. That's a problem. And so SwiftUI gives a solution, which is this. We can mark our setup string to be program state, something that will change over time. And when we do that, the data that would own that string, this bit of memory here, stops being inside our struct, which can't be changed, and gets moved away to data owned by SwiftUI, which can be changed freely. It's still owned by our struct. Ultimately, it's attached to our struct uniquely, that one view. If we had 10 views of the same thing, they'll all have their own setup strings. But each one is in RAM owned by SwiftUI, so it can be changed freely. And when we mark things as at state, it becomes changeable. We can now mark the two-way binding. This text field reads the string, but will also write the string by saying at state. Oops, like, no, none of those. At state, like this. I'll just edit right on here. There we go. Boom. Dollar setup. Whenever you want to use it, use dollar everywhere. So our text field here, we'd say some text field dollar setup. And that is marking the underlying values being modified with a two-way binding. And so, for our setup here, our text field wants to read and write our setup property. We have to say dollar setup, like that. And also dollar punchline and dollar rating, like that. Use the actual underlying value with a two-way binding, read the value and write the value when it changes for those text fields and that picker. And that'll make the errors mostly go away, in theory. It's now very, very angry. And you can see, I've made a small mistake, it's my fault. I've set a two-way binding here. We're now trying to modify setup, punchline, and rating. That's where at state comes in. At state, like that. These three values are going to change over time and must be kept in RAM active. I'll give you a demo shortly of why it becomes a problem, because it really does matter, because SwiftUI will throw away your structs whenever it wants to, as often as it wants to. We don't know when, we don't care when. It'll throw away and recreate them. So the values you store will be lost unless you have that at state. This is actual live program state. Please keep it active. Anyway, so now hopefully we can get ready to show this screen. So we're going to add a button to our previous screen, that content view, which will show our add view when it's tapped. Now, SwiftUI is declarative, not imperative. And these are two cunningly long words. And what they mean is this thing, in imperative, we say, do this, do this, do this, do this. We're saying what to do precisely. Present this view, show this thing, do what you want to. In declarative UI, we set out all our possible states, attach conditions to them, and SwiftUI decides which state is active based on our conditions we provide. question/statement from Caleb, a Swift Tilting Planet. Don't need to make @state private. So @state, I wasn't planning to cover it too much here. It's in the online book. @state is designed for simple types like strings and integers and booleans and doubles and so forth that are owned by the local view and only a local view. So yes, Apple does recommend, you don't need to, but it does recommend making them private so that you specifically underline this thing should go nowhere else. It's not designed to be shared. It's not required, it's just a nice to have, and no, I absolutely recommend you do it. Yes, of course, go ahead. Anyway, I wasn't planning on covering it here, but now we have. Anyway, what we want to do is say, show our ad view when it's time to show the ad view. So if I go back to our content view again, which was here, boom, I'm going to say there's a new state variable, and just for Caleb, I'm going to say private var showing ad joke is false. And when that boolean is true, it's time to show our ad joke view. Otherwise, put it back to false again. Oh, don't be sorry, I'm happy to cover more things. Like a bonus, cover more things. I hadn't planned to cover it at all. I always try and cover a subset of things in any given live stream because there's lots and lots of things to cover. Anyway, we're going to make a button in our navigation bar that's adding jokes and stuff, which will add a joke by showing our view. And it shows that view not by saying, hey, please create this view and show it, but by just toggling this boolean. So what we're going to do first is we're going to say underneath our list here, there is a navigation bar items using trailing, like this, using some trailing options. And our trailing thing is going to be a button. Let me indent this slightly. There we go. Boom. It's going to be a button to add stuff. So I'll say button, and I'll say add. And it takes a closure of stuff to do. And when the button's tapped, we're going to say self.showingAdJokes.toggle. Just toggle that boolean. If it was false, make it true. If it's true, make it false. Toggle the boolean. That's all it's going to do. Now, these buttons, you can actually add more to them if you want to. You could have an image in there if you choose to instead, using SF symbols or some text or text and an image. It's quite flexible, but here a simple text string is basically fine. Kevin, thank you very much. Thank you, Leonardo. It's very kind of you. Anyway, so that will say toggle the boolean. And now it's time to say, when that boolean is true, here's what should happen. We want to show a new screen with our ad view inside. Now, our ad view, if you remember, is expecting to find in the environment the managed object context. We've got to pass that along. We've got to read it here from our environment, then pass it along into its environment. It can read it as well. Guitar part of that, thank you, it's very kind. I do give treats to the dog when they finally arrive back later on. They get one treat per super chat. Apart from perhaps Rick's was very generous. They might get many treats for that one. They get some fat dogs. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, we're going to read the manage object context here and pass it on to our child. So I'll say up here for our fetch request. Again, it's same thing at environment / dot managed object context var mock. Same thing we had before. And then we're going to say there is a sheet. A sheet is a screen appearing over our current screen, which if you're a UI kit developer, it's presenting a modal view controller is what we're doing here. It's called a sheet because keep in mind, SwiftUI is cross-platform. It works on macOS and watchOS and tvOS and obviously iOS as well. And so it's not as simple as present modal view controller because it will look different on every system it works with. It's called a sheet generalized though. And this thing you can see has a property called isPresented. Is presented. So show this sheet when $showing ad joke, like that. What that means is when showing ad joke becomes true, automatically show whatever we write in here. All the stuff here will be shown as soon as showing ad joke is true. And it's a two-way binding. When this sheet's dismissed, it will set showing ad joke back to false again. So it'll work again and again and again. You can press add, dismiss, and so forth. In our case, the sheet we want to show is our add view, the thing we made earlier, where they can add a joke. And again, we've got to inject its environment in there so it can read its own manage object context. So we'll say as an add view, inject into its environment is /dot manage object context. And in this case, we're going to inject our self.mock, our context into its context. Now, there are many times when this isn't actually required because the environment's very, very clever. If you have, if you inject something into the environment for a navigation view, everything that's pushed onto the navigation view will gain the same environment. If you have a tab view with some environment, all its tabs will get the environment. If you compose views, like one view inside another view, inside another view, inside another view, and the top thing has an environment, all its subviews will have the same environment. Here, though, we're presenting a wholly new screen, a wholly new stack on the UI. That does not automatically get the same environment. We've got to pass it in there by hand. That's what we're doing here, passing it in by hand. Here is your new context. So, in theory, I've done enough to make this whole thing work, or I've forgotten some comedy stuff along the way. Let's find out. You never know. That's the fun of live coding. I'll press Command R to build and run, and we'll find out what I forgot. Because, you know, lol. Okay. There's our add screen. Boom. Up it slides. So that is our sheet becoming active because showing add joke became true. When I swipe it away, it becomes false again. I'm going to press add to add it again, like that. Okay. So I'm going to add some jokes. Our setup's going to be, what do you call cheese that isn't yours? Nacho cheese. The rating of that one, sigh. I'll press add joke, and then I'll modify this thing. Brianowski, will be online later on. Yes, the stream will be online YouTube for ever and ever and ever, much to my shame, I'm sure, for years to come. New joke. What do you call a fake noodle? Nacho Soto! Oh man, that's a perfect joke for you. Oh, if I'd known you were coming, I'd have made it successfully. Anyway, what do you call a fake noodle? It's an impasta. Sorry, that's definitely a sob. Anyway, I'll add that joke too. So I've added two jokes here, and when I dismiss the screen, you'll see behind the scenes they've been adding to our application automatically. And this is wonderful. So you can see that that fetch request saying, give me some data for our list, is automatically spotting changes. Saying, oh, you added a joke, I'll reload. I added another joke, I'll reload. And it'll insert rows continuously as things are happening elsewhere. We haven't got to say, hey, there's some changes happen, reload, 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 and so forth. So it'll do it automatically for us, which is really, really nice. Now, of course, I had to press add, and then type a joke in, then press add joke, and then swipe away. It's not ideal, right? We can do better than that. We can actually say here, what we want to do instead is when you press add joke, dismiss the screen. Like Emilio's just asked. It's amazing. I'm presciently planning ahead here. So what we want to do here is say, actually, when you press add joke, go away. And there are two ways of doing this. You can either inject a binding into the child view and say, hey, flip this to false and I'll hide you automatically myself, or it can hide itself. And we'll take the latter option here. It requires like one line less code, so we might as well save that extra 10 seconds here. So back in our add view, I'm going to read another environment value. I'll say at environment, and this time I'm going to read the value of presentation mode. I call this thing var presentation mode. And this tells us, is the screen being presented or not? But it also lets us dismiss the screen as soon as we're ready. And so down here, we add the joke. We say, save the manage object context. After that, I'm going to say self.presentation mode dot wrapped value dot, dismiss, which dismisses the view if it's currently presented. That will tell the thing, stop presenting yourself, so it'll slide away. That's one of the two options. Either one works depending on how you prefer to do your code. So let's try that. It should hopefully work. So, come on, there we go. So we have a joke again, and we'll do the old favorite. You know, what's brown and sticky? That's a stick. And that's obviously a sigh or whatever. I'll press add joke. Boom, the whole screen slides away, and there's our new row, as you'd expect. So that works well, but we can do better, because if you look at this add screen, this does not look great. I mean, firstly, it's wrapping the text very badly. Bit of a early SwiftUI bug there, I suspect iOS 13.1, which is due in like 2 days from now, will do better at that. But also, this picker, I mean, it's okay. There are lots of reasons why it's useful. In this case, it's not really a great bit of UI. Hitting a scrolling table of stuff. And this add joke thing doesn't really look like a button. It looks like a table view cell. So it's not a great UI. SwiftUI can do better. And to change that to be better, I'm going to change this one word here in line 22, list. I'll change that word to be form and nothing else. List became form. And now press Command R and see if you can spot the difference. When it builds and runs, of course. So I'll press add. And now add joke is a button. It's like a blue text. It's really clear what it is. Our rating wheel's gone. It's now a row we tap on. There's silence here. A new screen slides in with sob, sigh, silence, or smirk. I'll choose something like a smirk. And now smirk's in there instead. So it's really, really much more condensed form entry system of doing user input. I mean, this kind of code, making another screen slide in with some options and so forth, that took some work in UIKit. You had to write, you know, a subsection of strings or whatever you want to show and select it and come back again. It took some time, but it's basically free with the SwiftUI form system. So let's add another joke now. I'll say, what's red and smells like blue paint? Of course, the answer is red paint. Our rating is smirk. I'll press add joke. It slides away. So that's looking really, really nice now, I think. It looks a nicer way of presenting data. So let's head back to Keynote, and you can see we have made it onto core data being done. Next stop, how do we add and delete stuff in SwiftUI? And again, this is surprisingly easy because SwiftUI will do most of the work for us. Question from Romai, sorry. Yes, the source code will be on Git afterwards. There's Swift on Sundays repository where all this code will be eventually. Anyway, back in our Xcode window again, we're going to make it possible for users to delete jokes. So I'll find our content view here. And we're going to add a method to our content view. It will delete some jokes. Now, SwiftUI, just like UI table view, has a data type called an index set. A collection of indexes in a table where to delete things from. In our case, we'll say func remove jokes at some offsets, whatever index set. It's probably one thing. It could be 10 things or one thing. We don't really care what it is. It's just some numbers here. And all we're going to do is loop over all those offsets, find the joke at that index, and delete it from our manage object context. And finally, save the changes. So we'll say for index in offsets, let joke equals jokes at that index. Our mock dot delete that joke. And finally, I'm just going to sort of cheat slightly and say try mock dot save. You want to have do, try, catch, and so forth, but that's good enough for here. So find the joke at the index that's selected and delete it. So that's our code to handle the model being changed. To connect that to SwiftUI, we've got to assign an onDelete modifier. Now, earlier, someone, Jonas, I want to say, sorry, I forget, asked why we had a list, then a for each. Because actually, you can use list directly with list jokes like that and just pass it directly in. Now, the reason I did it with list and then for each rather than list jokes is because the onDelete modifier only works with for each. You can't delete things from a list directly, you delete things from a for each. So here I'll say for our for each, we have an onDelete modifier performing remove jokes. Which means when you want to delete a row from this table, this data, call remove jokes with that value. And that will immediately, hopefully, if I press Command R again, it should give us swipe to delete. There we go, round sticky, out it comes, delete, gone. So we get swipe to delete, free of charge, just done. Of course, it's often you want to delete many things at the same time, and to do that, we're going to add another navigation bar item. So we have here a trailing button saying add, to add jokes. Before that, I'm going to say there is a leading item as well. So the leading is an edit button. And that's a type all by itself in SwiftUI. And it will recognize, hey, this thing is attached to a table. I'm going to toggle between editing mode and done mode automatically. So I go to edit. The whole thing was editable. I can tap here and press delete, and it's gone and back to done again. It's effectively immediate just by adding that one single remove jokes method. Boom, it figures it out straight away. So that gives us adding and deleting. And now it's on to the really fun stuff. The stuff we don't get nearly enough talking about. How do we do good cross-platform SwiftUI? And there's still more to come. Like, we're only like halfway through the stream so far, and already like an hour and a quarter through. This would never have fitted into my tiny stage time at TriSwift New York. Anyway, so we're going to look at cross-platform here, and what I want to look at is how we can do a macOS build of our application, right? And of course, I can just go to the project settings here and check this box, Mac. And if you're running Catalina 10.15 or later, you will get a working Mac build. Like, that's it. That you check that box, boom, you are done. I'll press Command R now. And we're going to get a Catalyst / Marzipan rebuild of our SwiftUI application straight away for Mac. And it takes a bit of time to build, but that's fine. It's the first build. It's obviously faster for subsequent rebuilds afterwards. So a little think. Boom. It's now going to run my app. And this is going to run, remember, this is UI kit for macOS. So it's a variety of interesting layout choices. It basically looks like a UI kit app running on macOS, which is not necessarily what you want. But here we go. Now, as you can see, I have my table on the side here. I can press add here, and a new screen appears. My setup's going to be, what did the 0 tell the 8? Punchline, nice belt. For rating, I'm going to say this thing is going to be a sigh, and press add joke. So it works, right? And that's an instant, immediate Mac app built using SwiftUI, using Catalyst. And that works, right? It kind of works. It's not great, right? I mean, this obviously is a UI kit app on macOS. This whole ad screen here, it's a massive space over here waiting for you to choose one of these ratings. It does not look great. And so while I totally understand folks who want an instant Mac app using Catalyst, I get that. Go for it. I'm right behind you. Support you. Love it. Better than nothing. You can do better. And SwiftUI lets us build Mac apps and tvOS apps and watchOS app using the same sorts of Swift code. Now, one thing I have to outline very, very clearly up front is that SwiftUI is not designed to be cross-platform. It's not like Java Swing, where you write once, run anywhere. That is not what it's for. I'll show you exactly why, because we're now going to build you a macOS SwiftUI equivalent of our app using the native macOS SwiftUI app kit now. No more SwiftUI on Catalyst. So I'm going to press Command-Shift-N to make a new project. And I'll choose macOS and choose app. I'll leave coordinator selected. I'll choose SwiftUI, and I'll call this Dad Jokes Realsies, because we're doing a real app kit port now. I'll press next. Then create my desktop like that. Boom. Now, I am not going to sit and type all that code again, right? As entertaining as I am with my hilarious wit and so forth, you'd be extremely bored. So I'm going to cheat slightly here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open our coordinator model on macOS and open it on the iOS version, select joke from there, and then just paste it in, right? Just copy the entire thing across. Boom. Give me that same model, please. Just like in iOS, I'll do code gen manual num, and then use the create ns manage object subclass to make a new subclass for that. Yes, yes. In dad jokes, realsies, just like we did in iOS, exactly the same, and then remove the optionality, like that. Question here from Funky. Can't we attach the Mac code to the current app? If you're referring to, can we have a native macOS code in the same project as a native iOS code? The answer is no. I believe you cannot at this time. They are very separate. You can do Watch and iOS at the same time, and of course iOS and tvOS in the same thing, because that's still UIKit. But no, you can't have AppKit programs and UIKit programs in the same same project at this time. Which is helpful, and you'll see why in a second once I get there. Anyway, I basically copied and pasted our coordinator model from the iOS thing to the macOS thing because it saves us some time. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically steal some code. So in our iOS build here is our content view, right? I'm going to select all the code for our content view, boom, and just paste that into the content view for our Mac build, like that. Paste it in. I'm not going to retype it. That would be hideously tedious. Like that. I'm also going to obviously paste in the code for the other views we made. We made emoji views here. I'll steal that, boom, and I'll paste that one into the same file because I'm being super lazy. And then I will also paste in add view. I'm just going to grab all the code from iOS and just slap it into one massive Swift file because I'm being a bit lazy on the macOS version. So I've pasted in the coordinator settings, our joke entity, and I've pasted in content view and emoji view and add view. So the code is copied across directly. Now you might think, okay, perhaps we can't share the project between Mac and iOS. Could we at least share the same files, like make them point at the same files on disk in the same directory structure, so we can at least share things indirectly without having the same shared project? You probably could. But the reason I've done this exact project is to show you why it isn't necessarily as easy as you think. I'll just press Command B in the macOS AppKit Xcode, and you'll see errors now. And the errors are, of course, brilliant because SwiftUI is pushing Swift very hard. So it's saying our navigation view, protocol type any cannot conform to view because only concrete types conform to protocols for the navigation view. And this is extremely common in SwiftUI. You make a mistake on line 20, and it's a genuine mistake, it's wrong in line 20, but Swift will point out the error on line 35. And 35 is fine, or 35 is an empty brace, something like that. It's completely fine, perfectly normal line. It will mislabel the errors very, very commonly. I should say the Swift team absolutely knows the problem. If you want to file examples on their Jira, please do, but they do know it's a problem. They're working very, very hard to make this much, much better. I know it's very high on their priority list to make the errors actually accurate and not misleading or indeed completely wrong. What it means in this case is, if I scroll up, you'll see that edit button doesn't exist on macOS. Like that whole type we had in our navigation bar items, the edit button is for iOS only. It's not available in macOS. So we've got to get rid of our edit button. It's no longer possible to have that. So out goes edit button. I'll press Command B again. And now it's complaining. Navigation bar title doesn't exist either. In fact, navigation bar items doesn't exist either. You know, you can't have titles or items in your navigation views in macOS. And that's code that worked perfectly well on iOS. But those modifiers, that struct edit button, does not exist on macOS because navigation views don't have these things. You never see, like, you know, big titles, dad jokes and big titles on macOS. It does not exist on macOS. It's got a whole idea of how UI should look. So actually this whole items thing and a title needs to go away. You can't have those on your macOS build. And the same is true down here. This title needs to go away. You can't have those things. And that's why you can't just share the same Swift files very easily. Lots of things you can share, of course you can. Simpler stuff. But anywhere where you're accessing particularly unique things that only work on one of the platforms, like if you're doing watchOS, anything Digital Crown, for example, that's obviously only watchOS, doesn't work on iOS or macOS, you have to remove. you got to delete it or write little shims and so forth around it. So you can't just simply share all your code everywhere. It doesn't work. Anyway, that ought to be enough to make our code at least compile. I've stripped out the things that don't exist on macOS, leaving just a pure bit of SwiftUI that do work on macOS, and it should work. I'll press Command R, and let's see what happens. Chances are it'll crash. Yes. Bang. Big crash. And it's another helpful variation between macOS and iOS. And this is, I don't even know why this is a variation. It really shouldn't be a variation, but there you go. You can see we've been dumped in the app delegate because macOS has no scene delegate. And the app delegate is where we create our very first content view, and we inject our manage object context into that content view, into the environment everyone else to use, for our fetch request to use. And if you scroll down, you'll see this container is actually being loaded lazily with a completion closure. So what's happening here is we have this hideous race. It gets passed in to the environment to be used in the fetch request. And when the fetch request starts, then the lazy kicks in to try and actually read that context. And it realizes it hasn't actually loaded the data yet. What we have to do really is get this context out of that line of code and do it beforehand. We want to say before line 22, let context equals that, trigger our context loading now, and then pass that into our content view, like that. And that's what it takes. Now, if you want it to be extra safe, realistically, what I would do is actually get rid of this whole lazy thing entirely, have your own container being loaded, this thing, and have your window creation inside this load persistent stores completion handler. That's a whole other kettle of fish. This is fine for now, though. That should indeed work. Let's get context now and then pass that thing in. Oops, sorry. Context, not content view, context. Like that. Yes, thank you, Kevin. I just spotted that same thing when I press Command B. There's obviously a bit of lag there. That's fine. Boom. There's our window working vaguely sensibly. Now, obviously, we now have no navigation bar items. So there's no way to add jokes. So we're going to go back to our content view. And find, oh, hello again. You want another treat? Come on then. It's always Aria. Luna has not come in at all yet. Come on. Good girl. There we go. Good girl. You've had lots of generous donations today, you know. These people like you very much. Anyway, good girl. Go and tell Aria, by the way, there's treats going. Anyway, down you get. We're going to go and find our content view here, and we have this list of stuff to show our jokes. And what we want to do really is after our items, we want to have a button saying add jokes. So, hey, no, you had a treat already, clear off. We're going to say here, after all our jokes are shown, add a new button saying, do you not get another treat? Clear off. Add joke there. And that will do the same thing you had before, which is toggle showing add joke like that. Boom. If it was false, make it true, otherwise make it false again like that. And that will flip the boolean, which will show the sheet and work as before. So hopefully I'll press Command R and we'll see how that's doing. When I was looking, admire my dog in the meantime, can't you, while it's loading. There we go. There's our add joke screen. And when I press add joke, this new sheet slides in and you can see there's all sorts of problems with this sheet. One of which is, clear off, one of which is we have, this thing goes right with the edges. There's no padding around these fields. It looks a bit ugly around there. One of which is this sort of grey space across here. Another one is this thing can be shrunk down to like nothing at all, which just looks silly and wrong. Give her a treat. All right. Oh, Dennis gives you a treat. Come on then. Come on. Good girl. Here you go. Good girl. Yeah, she's a good dog. Where's Aria? Where's Luna, sorry? Luna! Otherwise, you'll get fat. Tell Luna the treat's going. Anyway. Right. So you can see it's kind of working now, right? But it doesn't look great. You can resize down to nothing at all. There's no padding around our form. And there's this weird grey bar on the side here. And that's none of that's weird. That's all to be expected because of what we've decided in SwiftUI. So we're going to fix these things real fast. The first thing we can say, which one are you? Oh, both of them. Okay, come on, both of you. Come on, Luna. You've earned something. You've had 2 or 3. You know, no, you've had the load. Luna, come on, up. Come on. Good go. Look, only one of you. Clear off. You had like 4. You had 4. Or 5. Anyway, first things first. Try and focus in this project here. We're going to go to our add view down here. And the first thing we're going to do is say, I want a bit of padding around our form. So we can see our form starts here and ends down here. I'm going to say this thing has some padding. A little bit of space around the edges. So it doesn't go right away to the edge of the window. It looks a bit nicer on the screen. I press add now, hopefully. Boom, it slides in. We get a little bit of spacing around the edges. It looks a little bit nicer on the screen. Second thing is we can resize this thing down to no space at all, like that, which looks silly. And we're losing the word rating, for example. Doesn't look great. We can do that by saying this thing has a minimum width on its frame, which is here. So before our padding, I'll say frame has min width of 400. I'm not going to specify height, actual width, maximum width, or maximum height, whatever. Just the minimum width of 400. So it can go any other size, but no less than 400 points wide. And the same thing again. It should look better. There's our joke. I'll put it down, and boom, it can't go any smaller than that now. Small as it goes is there. Looks much, much nicer. And the last thing is this mysterious grey bar that appears on our screens. Doesn't look great on the side of these things, which is actually being triggered by our navigation view. If you remember, our add view on macOS has a navigation view. And our macOS expects to have a left and right. Thing here controls this thing on the right. That's how macOS likes to work, just like iPad. It's not really required on macOS. It's a simple form. We haven't got a pan in and out of options anymore. And there's no title, of course. So I'll just delete that whole navigation view from our form like that. So the form is a top level thing inside our body like that. And press Command R. And hopefully now the whole thing looks fairly good. There's add joke. That screen looks good. There's no space on the right here anymore. It's all written out nicely. I'll set up, I'll say, what has 4 wheels and flies? Answer is a garbage truck. By the way, look at this rating. This rating is no longer a panning in, panning out form thing or a wheel iOS picker. It's now a drop-down selection box, just like you expect on macOS. So I'll say it's a sob. And add joke. That slides away, and there's our response there. So we're actually be able to add jokes now. Now, what we're seeing on the right here is our detail area. This thing here, where we'll show things when it's tapped. But watch what happens when I tap on our option here. What are 4 wheels and flies? Click on that. Boom, a garbage truck. And it's visible, there's a tiny little space there. That's a little space it's got. And it won't get any bigger than that. We can't change it vertically anymore. It's clipped to be exactly that size vertically now. And the reason for that is because on macOS, things will automatically collapse down to the amount of space they need to be shown. It's like an auto layout constraint. It'll shrink down to its required content size and not be any bigger. What we want to say really, when we are in our content view, we have this thing, push a text for our punchline. Text things, this thing here, can actually be resized to any size we want to, which is the standard macOS behavior. People like to be able to grab like Xcode, whatever, just drag it around freely to do stuff. And so we can say push to our punchline, but using a frame. And this time I'll forget min width and instead say max width is dot infinity. And max height is also dot infinity. Let them resize those things freely. Be any size they want to be. And now I press Command R again. I have to try and juggle our little window around a little bit because it'll be a strange shape and size. There we go. There's a useless shape and size. When I press that, we hopefully see, boom, a garbage truck. So it works much more naturally now. It doesn't sort of shrink it down the tiny amount of space anymore. It just works smoothly. So we had to make a few small adjustments to make this thing work on macOS. It is not write once, run anywhere. But it absolutely is learn once, use anywhere. Like the concepts of stacks and lists and identifiable and sheets and state and yada, yada, yada. These are all fixed things you learn once in SwiftUI and apply on all of Apple's platforms out of the box. And that's the goal with SwiftUI. Don't expect to share all your code. Ain't gonna happen. Share many things, share models for sure, hopefully some views, but don't hope to ship everything. It'll be confusing. And in fact, you'll find that there are some things you can do on macOS that you can't do on iOS. I explained that the watch has digital crown. You can attach a digital crown modifier to things. You can sort of swipe up and down on the crown to control your UI. And macOS actually has similar things as well. So we've said make a navigation view with a list inside of all our jokes, yada, yada, yada. What we can do as well is say that this list has a list style, like this. And there is one dedicated list style for macOS you want to care about, which is very, very common in macOS, called the sidebar list style, like that. We're saying use the sidebar list style for our list of jokes. And now when I press Command R to run the macOS app one more time, we should see a very small difference. Now I'm going to bring up iOS in the background because iOS has this bright background color, like that. And you'll see now when the window goes over it, we get this sort of translucent effect, the sort of frosted glass effect you get on macOS. And that's extremely important in macOS because when the window is active, you get that sort of transparent frosted glass. And when it's not active, boom, I've clicked away, it goes completely opaque. So users expect to have that effect and know at a glance which window's active and give a hint of what's behind. Of course, that doesn't exist in iOS. You don't have overlapping windows and stuff on iOS. It doesn't happen. So that sidebar list style makes no sense in iOS. So sidebar style is not available on iOS or watchOS, only on macOS. And knowing when to add these custom modifiers is really a part of getting great SwiftUI apps. Find you can write a great iOS SwiftUI app or a great watchOS one, but to do a great macOS one, it's got to look like a macOS app. Got to have the kind of things macOS folks expect it's going to have. So that gives us, I think, a pretty nice macOS app, right? So I'm going to head back to Keynote here. You can see, boom, that's cross-platform. And that puts us an hour and a half through. That puts us about 2/3 of the way through our stream. I'm going to pause for 1 second because I do all these streams completely free of charge. I take questions as many as I can. I hang around for questions afterwards. And all I ask in return is you hit a like on the video. Just go and press the like button. If you're enjoying the stream, if you're learning things in this stream, if you want to see more streams like this one, please press the like button now because it helps YouTube recommend the video to other people, which in turn helps me, encourage me to make more videos like this one. So it'd mean a lot to me if you could stop for a moment, press the like button, to show your appreciation for the video, and then we'll carry on with custom UI. Because so far, what you're seeing is sort of regular standard Swift UI, right? The kind of thing they show at WWDC. Here's a cool list, and here's deleting, and here's whatever. It's really fast for doing this kind of stuff, like call data and forms and stuff. But what we don't see much of is fully custom UI, like ditch lists, ditch navigation, and so forth. What's it like with a wholly new UI for navigating around? And that's what I'll talk about now. We're going to effectively not quite start from scratch, but ditch a lot of our code to show what this app could look like with a wholly custom UI. So I'm going to go back to Xcode again, and I'm going to ditch my Xcode for dad joke realties. That's the macOS one. So Xpoint, thank you very much. That's very kind. I'll make sure the dogs get another treat each when they come back, which they will eventually because they hit a treat bag a mile away. Anyway, head back to iOS again, and I'm running the 11 Pro Max. I'll switch back to 11 Pro Max here again. Boom, there we go. And we're going to totally redo our UI. Right now, if you remember, we had this UI where we had a scrolling table view of hilarious dad jokes, an add joke button, a top right corner, an edit button, and you could tap on the thing to read a joke, and a new screen slides in, and so forth. That's all perfectly fine, perfectly vanilla, perfectly boring SwiftUI, right? Let's scrap that. Boom. There's our UI. Fine. We're going to ditch all that stuff. What we're going to do is we're going to replace it with a custom gradient color behind and do drawing on top of that. So in my assets here, I'm going to add 3 named colors. I'll say there's a new color set, another new color set, and another new color set. And this first one, I'm going to name start for the start of our gradient. The second one is middle for the middle of our gradient. And the third one is called end for the end of our gradient. And for these colors, I'll say start. I'll add in some hex values I've checked out ahead of time to look fairly good. Our first hex value is going to be 12C2E9. The sort of light blue, powder puff blue, I guess you might call it. For the middle color, I'm going to say you are also a hexadecimal value here, and you have the hex of C470EC. It's a sort of lilac color, yeah-ish. And the end color, I'll say also hex, you have the hex value of F64, F58, like that. It is crimson, raspberry, Apple would probably call it. You know, I'm trying to think what Apple would call that name. They give it a fancy name, wouldn't they? Of course they do. Anyway, so we've got this sort of powder puff blue, a sort of lilac purple, and then some raspberry red or something like that, right? Those are the colors we want to use inside our gradient. And so in our content view here, let's hide this sidebar and this sidebar, make some space here. I'm going to go ahead and delete this whole navigation view. All going to go away. And I'll replace it instead with our third kind of stack. Oh, it's coral, says Roman. You're absolutely right. Coral's a great description for that color. It's coral. Wasn't that like color of the year for this year or last year? I forget. Anyway, we're going to say our navigation view is now a Z stack or a Z stack. A Z stack. And this thing allows us to layer views on top of each other. Thing below, then thing above, then thing above, and thing above, and thing above, and thing above, and so forth. In our case, that means we can start with, in the bottom of our Z stack, a linear gradient. That's a gradient from a line, from top to bottom, or left to right, whatever direction you want. So sort of a line gradient like that. It takes a gradient, so we'll say there is a gradient. And for the colors, this will be a color array. So it's going to be color, start, then, comma, color, middle, then color, end, like that. 3 colors, the ones we define in our asset catalog. Then for the start point, I'm going to say start at the dot top of our gradient and work down to the endpoint being dot bottom, like that. So draw top to bottom our gradient like that. I'll press Command R, and we should see a nice gradiated powder puff, coral, lilac, whatever you want to call this color selection I've chosen already. Gradient. There we go. So it's blue down to purple down to pink at the bottom. It's like the real kind of iOS 13 neon colors we are so used to, as you can see by the background color here in my simulator. Yes, bright colors. You'll notice, by the way, when we run it again, it didn't actually go edge to edge. There's a white space at the top and at the bottom. Now, I mentioned earlier for the navigation view, the large bar titles are the default in SwiftUI because we get the good behavior, the modern system standard behavior is a default in SwiftUI, which is really, really nice. And in this instance, it's also the default to avoid the safe areas. SwiftUI is aware of the notch and aware of the home indicator by default, and so it will avoid them by default. It's smart on your behalf. Here though, this gradient doesn't contain any content, it's just there to color the screen something nice. That should really go under the safe area on all the sides. And we can do that with a modifier. We're going to say for our Z stack, we can have this whole thing go under the safe area by saying edges ignoring safe area dot all. Go under the safe area in all directions. When I run again, we should see those white spaces are now gone. It should be colorful everywhere. Boom. Okay. So now we haven't got a navigation view anymore. We have no place for our add button. We're going to make a button by hand. So we're going to our Z stack, and below the linear gradient, or to put it on top of the linear gradient, Germund asks, do you pick the colors hard-coded like this? I usually have the colors for the app in colors in Asset Catalog. That's exactly what I just did. I just added the Asset Catalog first as start, middle, and end, which is exactly the normal way to do it. I wouldn't normally define colors like in code if possible. Yes, Asset Catalog is absolutely the right place for colors like that. Anyway, below the linear gradient, i.e. on top of it, we're going to add our button. So we'll say there is a button with the title add joke. And this will, if you remember, all it has to do is toggle that boolean. So we'll say self.showing_add_joke.toggle. That's already code written previously. It'll take the sheet down here and show the add view automatically. That much hasn't changed. But now this button has to stand out on our bright, colorful gradient thing going on. And so we'll have to add a little bit of design around it. We're going to say this thing has some padding. So it's not just the size of the text itself, it's bigger than that, spacing around it. This thing has a background. I'm going to say it uses the color black with some opacity, in this case 0.5. So it'll be a 50% black behind it, bit of blending from the color behind. I'll say this thing has a clip shape. So it's not a square button, I want to use a capsule shape. So it's like a rounded lozenge shape on the screen. And then at the end of that list, I'll say .foreground color is .white. So it's got a white text color on the semi-opaque black behind it with a capsule shape and some padding. I'll press Command R. And let's see how that looks. Okay, so there's our layout right there, looking good. There's our capsule shape. It's a bit bigger on either side because of the padding. You can see that nice sort of semi-transparent color behind it, plus the white text. Looks really, really nice. Live preview will stop regularly. When you make massive changes, when you screw up your code with errors and so forth, the live preview will stop regularly. It's very, very common. I've hit resume and you can see it works straight away. It's more that I wasn't constantly doing it because I was making changes. You've got to keep hitting resume. I should say, by the way, Option Command P resumes a live preview. It's a really nice shortcut to have at your hands when you're doing coding with the preview. One thing I want to show just briefly, and this is really, really important in SwiftUI, and I say it all the time, and I can't say it enough, quite frankly, is the order of your modifiers matters. So if I had this padding modifier out, it would be much smaller like that. If I place it after the background, it means something different. As you can see now, there's a blue line. If I zoom in slightly, there's a blue line around add joke, but the background color has stayed small. This is because SwiftUI has applied the background color and then added padding, which in this case is really not what we want. We want to apply the padding and then color everything, including the padding. So the order you write things really, really matters. It's important. Anyway, there's our add joke button. And, that's okay, it works, but it's going to get in the way of the rest of our UI. We're going to show our jokes here. We don't want the button there, we want it somewhere else. In this case, at the top of our screen. And so, I'm going to say our Z stack has an alignment attached to it, which is .top. Align things to the top. You can see, boom, our add joke button goes to the very top. Now, it's gone under the notch, which is intentional. We said to our Z stack, don't worry, go under the safe area, it's fine. So to fix that, we've got to move our button down a little bit, give it a little nudge downwards. So we'll say, in its modifier list, .offset, Y is, and I'll just do 50. You have to push it safely down from the safe area like that. So at the top, but not the very top, like that. Ben Mitchell, I don't know how to do that. I'm sorry. If you could ask me later, I'll look into it. I'm afraid I don't know how to do that right now. And I don't want to get distracted while I'm doing it live. But let me know in the future, and I'll totally do it for the next stream if we could. Joshua, it does not crash with coordinator and live preview. Just make sure you inject a context into your live preview. Otherwise, you'll have problems like that. Kiloko asks, is there a specific way to think about ordering modifiers to get the correct behavior? Or it's moving them around. It's not just moving them around, it's a logical thing. If you imagine you have a label that's this big, and it's going to modify that, you want to apply the padding first to be bigger, and then color the whole thing. If you color it first, and then make it bigger, it won't have colored the new bit yet. Now, tomorrow, I'm launching the 100 Days of SwiftUI, and the very first project on like day 17 or so, we go into, not the very first project, I think project 3, we go into a lot of detail about why this works like that, exactly how it works and why. I want you to understand why. Like, oh, that's obvious. That's obvious. And the crux of the matter is, we look at these things as methods, like pad this thing, add a background, add a clip, add a foreground color, and of course the are methods. But in SwiftUI, they're actually modifiers. All the views you work with are structs. And when you apply a modifier, it returns to you a new struct that's been modified. You get a modified content, which contains your original thing plus some transformation. And when you modify it again, you get a modified content, your thing, first transformation, second transformation. Modify it again, modified content, yada, yada, yada. So each time you're modifying, it's stacking up and stacking up and stacking up. And in fact, what you can do is apply certain things multiple times. You could say, apply some padding, apply a background color, apply some more padding, apply a different background color, a third padding, a third background color, and it'll stack up like strokes and round it again and again and again. Because you aren't modifying the same thing, you're modifying new things every single time. Anyway, we've now pushed it down from the top. Total Guy asks, well, I mean, asks how to make it work on all phones. Realistically, you would either move the edge ignoring safe area up to the linear gradient. So linear gradient exists first and then overlaps everything, and the button is inside the safe area, or you would just suck it down and allow it, because bluntly it's fine. I mean, it's only 50 down from the top. That's perfectly fine. Because even on a regular iPhone, like an iPhone 8, you still have a navigation bar up here saying the clock and the Wi-Fi signal and whatever they had at the top bar, right? So it's always at the top there anyway, with or without the notch. You're not really losing much space. But yes, as Kieran says, you could just apply a modifier somewhere else and stack it differently. Anyway, right, so we now have our add joke button, and this will work. Of course, I can press Command R. The add joke button is real. I can add a joke now with the same form we had before. It's exactly the same, hopefully. Add joke, boom, there we go. Okay, so that hasn't changed. That's the same. Okay, now what we want to do, of course, is show a list of jokes. A scrolling list of jokes I can sort of see it all at once and swipe through. And so to do that in Xcode, I'm going to start making a new SwiftUI view. Press Command N, make a new SwiftUI view. I'll call this thing a joke card. A piece of UI, a little card in our UI that shows exactly one joke. Like this. Boom, in it comes. This thing is going to use core data, so we can modify things later on. So I'll do import core data here. We can modify the jokes as we go. It's going to have one property for our joke, which is going to be the joke it's showing. So I'll just do var joke is a joke. So to create a joke card, tell it which joke to show. Inside the body here, I'll make our UI. This is going to have a VStack inside a VStack. The inner VStack will show the card, like a little white box with a punchline, setup, and a punchline. That's our VStack there, with a background behind it, like a little card. The outer VStack will contain that card plus our little emoji view with a rating. Is it smirk or silent or sob and so forth? So we're going to have a VStack, and inside there, another VStack. This is our inner VStack, the one showing the setup and the punchline for our joke. So I'll say that it's some text, and it's going to be our joke's setup. I'll apply some modifiers here. I'll say this thing has a large title font. Again, SwiftUI gives us smart defaults as standard. We get dynamic type as standard. If you want to use fixed fonts, of course you can, but by default you get dynamic type. So your type grows or shrinks according to user settings, which is really, really nice. I'll say this thing has a line limit of 10. It can go from 0 lines to 10 lines, but no more. Clip after that so it doesn't get too big on the screen. I'll also say, dot line limit, also say this thing has some padding, but this time I'm going to provide exactly what kind of padding. Before we just said padding, which means apply some system appropriate padding to all edges. In this instance, I'm going to say I just want one edge, which is dot horizontal, just on the leading and trailing edges of our setup line. Below that, inside the inner VStack, I'll say another text with self.joke.punchline, like that. This will have a slightly smaller font. I'll do .font.title, still large, but not as large. It has the same line limit, so up to 10 lines, but no more. And this has some padding equal to dot horizontal, and dot bottom. So leading, trailing, and bottom edges have padding, but not the top. And that will end our inner VStack. I want to apply one modifier to both those text views. And what you can actually do is apply this modifier to the VStack, and it will force it down to its child views. It'll modify the things inside the VStack. We can say there's a multi-line text alignment of dot center. So a line center for the joke setup and joke punchline attached to the VStack, and it will apply to the things inside the VStack as well. We're now in the outer VStack, this one here. We've got our inner VStack with our joke in. The outer VStack will have our emoji view for that joke's rating. And I'm going to modify this so it has a larger font, because as you're seeing by default, it's a tiny little emoji. I'm giving us a larger font by saying dot font. And this time, just to show it off nicely, I'll say a hard-coded font size of a system size of 72. Again, broadly you want to have dynamic type, large title, and so forth. Here though I'm saying exactly 72 points, just so you can see both options in code. And for that VStack, the outer VStack, we can start to add some modifiers. What should this thing look like? In this instance, I'm going to say the outer VStack has a frame with the min height of 0 and the max height of dot infinity. Allow this thing to take up as much space as it needs, from nothing up to huge, to resize freely there. But for its width, I want exactly 300 points. So we're saying the height's flexible. We don't care how big or small it is. What we care about is the width. Squeeze it like this and let it flow freely up and down around it. And that's our inner VStack and our outer VStack. Now if I press Command B, this code won't compile, because down here, our joke card expects to have a joke passed in, which is a bit of a pain in the backside now, because we've got core data running, so we can't just make a new struct and inject the struct. We've got to actually make an actual joke instance attached to an actual context every time. Honestly, normally at this point in a live demo, I'll just delete that code. I'm going to show you how to do it because I'm being generous with my time. It's like 8 p.m. already. I'll show you how it's done. And so you know it's done. We'll say let joke equals a new joke. And for the context, I'll make a new temporary ns manage object context. Manage object context. There we go. Boom. Using the concurrency type of dot main Q concurrency type. Then give it some values. So joke.setup equals, oops, what do you call a hen who counts her eggs? Joke.punchline equals a Mathema chicken, lol. And then joke.rating is definitely psi for that one. And then we can say for our joke card, we will return a joke card using that joke. So we'll inject a new temporary testing joke just to make our code compile. Now it's worth saying at this point, the preview provider code, this stuff here that shows you the quick canvas previews on the right here, it's just temporary code for use inside Xcode, right? That code will not ship to the App Store ever. You haven't got to worry about having things in here, you know, making temporary contexts and so forth. It's perfectly fine. Don't worry about it. Make it, and it's just going to get thrown away when you go to the App Store. Doesn't really matter. Oscar, how I thought I can indentation 2 spaces instead of 4. No, I haven't. So that's actually the Swift standard library standard is 2 spaces. I find it awfully hard to read, but not enough for my eyes. I'm used to 3 or 4. But particularly because, certainly until recently, the SwiftUI template would ignore your indentation settings in Xcode. So you say I want 2, it would give you 4 anyway, and all your new code would have 2. You have 2 and 4 in the same view, which is hideous and really annoyed me. So I'm sticking with a standard of 4 right now, which is what Xcode's default is. Anyway, so we now have our simple layout. You can see it just looks like a simple VStack there. You can't see we have an inner and an outer VStack. So what we're going to do is we're going to modify our inner VStack so it looks more like a card, like an actual thing on the screen. So we're going to say first, this thing has a clip shape. Now you saw previously we had a capsule to get a sort of lozenge clip shape. Now I'm going to say there is a rounded rectangle clip shape, like that. And this has a corner radius of, I'll just do 25 points, like that. And for its background color, I'm going to say there is a rounded, I'll show you my whole new line there, but easy to read. There we go. There's also a rounded rectangle, like that, with corner radius of 25. I'm going to fill that thing with color white and shadow that thing using color dot black, radius 5 points with x0 and y0, so sort of the default x and y distance around it. And now you can see our inner card is more clear, I think. You can see that's our inner VStack, and the outer VStack's the one around it, that big blue thing there, with the inner card and the thing around it like that. Okay, that's our joke, such as it is. We can now use that. So I'll go back to our content view over here. We have our gradient plus our add joke. And what we want to do is have a for each. Stack up these things in a H stack, going horizontally along that way, all the jokes in our core database system, right? Of course, when you have more than 2, you'll be out of space on an iPhone. So we're going to put this thing inside a scroll view, so we can scroll left and right. So I'll say between our linear gradient and the button, I'll say there is a scroll view, and this thing will scroll horizontally, like that. And I'm going to say shows indicators is false. So we haven't got the sort of like black or white indicator beneath the thing moving around. It doesn't look great in this UI. Inside our scroll view is going to be a H stack. So all our views will be laid up horizontally across the way. And our H stack, I'll say, has a spacing of 10 points. So a little bit of spacing between the views to make them spaced out on the screen more easily. Inside the H stack, that's where our for each comes in. So I'll say for each jokes, id / setup like before, joke in. Except now rather than saying text of joke.setup, I'm going to say there's a joke card with that joke. So make a joke card for every one we have. So I'll now press Command R to see if I've got it all right. Let's find out. It's exciting. Okay, so we have no jokes. Good. I've got to add joke here. I'll say for our setup, what starts with E, ends with E, and only has one letter in it. Answer is envelope, obviously. Silence for that one, I feel. Add joke. Boom, there's our card. Add another joke. Let's delete that text. My wife told me I was terrible with directions. Punchline is, so I packed up my things and write. Lol. Rating for that one is going to be smirk and add joke. And do one more here. I'm going to say, what does Pac-Man eat with his chips? And this one's really hard to type. It is guacamole. Lol. Also smirk, add joke. And you can now see we have these things going horizontally in a scroll view. Boom. You scroll around and see our jokes like that. So that is how we do custom UI in SwiftUI. Boom. Now let's look at gestures. Gestures take a little bit more thinking. Not much. I think you'll enjoy them very much because you can do a lot with these things. For example, we could say, I want to have a picture on here. Now, I mentioned to you earlier about state being thrown away by SwiftUI whenever you want to. And this is a great example of that. If I go into our asset catalog and then open up Finder and go to my desktop, I have some example assets here of dads smiling like this at 2x and 3x, pictures of dads just sort of smiling, right? And this is what I want to have in my dad jokes app, pictures of dads looking happy like that. They're obviously hilarious dads with the hilarious dad jokes. I'm going to grab these things and drag them all into my asset catalog, hopefully. Come on, in you go, boom. And I'm going to modify my joke card. So every card we have has a hilarious dad picture at the top, grinning away. And this will demonstrate an important point of SwiftUI. So we'll say here, every card has an image showing a dad picture. So I'll say there is an image of the dad with string interpolation int.random in 1 through 4, like that. Pick a random between 1 to 4, inclusive, dad 1, dad 2, dad 3, dad 4, and use that for the image. I need to close that bracket like that, my mistake, boom. I'm going to make this thing resizable and ask it to be exactly a frame of width 300, our width, and a height of 100. So it'll clip to be exactly the right size for the space we have. And now when I press Command R, we should see our dad picture. Oops, I made a mistake. Into random, yeah, another one there. My mistake again. Boom. We should now see a random dad picture at the top of our jokes. It's obviously random every time, so every time you run it, it'll be different. So we have two the same, one different at the end. Boom, that's great. So we can see it working quite nicely. But we'll leave it there for the time being, and we'll see an interesting problem with this. I might do one small thing. See the way it goes edge to edge with the H-stack? Doesn't look great. I'll add a little bit of padding to the H-stack just quickly. H-stack here, we'll just do dot padding. Just a bit away from the very edges of the screen. I think it'll look a bit nicer. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's better. A little bit of space at the edges here. Anyway, so you can see it looks nice for now, but I'll leave it there and we'll see what happens when we make some more changes. So we're going to modify this code so that the hilarious punchline is not visible by default. It's obscured by default. And when you tap on the card, it will reveal the punchline. So I'll say for our card, there's a state which is showing punchline equals false. By default, we're not showing the punchline for each card. And then way down for our inner VStack, the little card, the white part, below our background, I'll say there is an on tap gesture, like that. Just fix that spacing slightly. Boom. So when the card is tapped, I want to toggle showing punchline. So I tap the card, show the punchline, tap it again, hide the punchline, but it's not showing by default. And now we can use that to define how we show or obscure our punchline. So we have this text here, title, line limit 10, padding, I'm going to add some more modifiers. I'm going to say this thing has a blur modifier. And the blur takes a radius, how much to blur by. And I'll say, well, listen, if self.showing punchline is true, then do 0. No blur. If it's false, using a ternary operator, I'll say use a 6-point blur. So when we're not showing the punchline, use a 6-point blur. When we are showing it, use a 0-point blur, really sharp. We'll also say that there's an opacity. An opacity will do self.showing punchline again. If that's true, opacity is 1, i.e. 100% fully opaque. Otherwise, 0.25, mostly translucent. And now I'll run the code again. And this should work, but with a few interesting provisos. Let's find out. Oscar Alvarez says, can we handle a scroll position programmatically? To the best of my knowledge, no, but I could look into that some more for you and let you know. I haven't done that currently. It may not be possible. I'm not sure. The best one I know you can't currently. Anyway, so you can see beautifully blurred out, beautifully faded away for all these things. When I tap to show, it shows. Tap to hide, it shows and hides. But notice how, as I tap to show and hide, the picture is changing. Not always. Sometimes it stays the same. That's because randomly it's getting the same number again and again and again. So what's happening here is, when we toggle showing punchline, SwiftUI changes this Boolean from true to false. That piece of RAM has gone from false to true or true to false. And that's owned by SwiftUI. That's what @state means. The memory is being held somewhere else by SwiftUI, so it can be modified. Otherwise, structs can't be changed. SwiftUI changes that to be true or false, and goes, aha, that has now changed. I'd better reload the view to reflect those changes, because that might be mattering to your UI. This, don't show this, do this, don't do this, which in our case it does. So it's modifying the blur with a new value of showing punchline. But of course, when it reloads the view, it will also choose a new random number for our dad image. So we're now randomly getting different dad pictures by toggling a simple boolean. Other parts of our view are changing unintentionally, which is of course not what you want. You want to have that picture be fixed in place and not just change randomly. What you want to do really is take this random number out of there entirely, like that, and make that itself at state var, like that. Boom. And just for care, I'll make these two private again, because of course he's absolutely right, but it is recommended. Like that. Boom. And a number, like that. So we'll make it once when the struct loads, store it as state by SwiftUI so it won't change again and again and again, and use that fixed integer in our dad picture, like that. And now when we run the code again, we should find we can tap on the blur or unblur as many times as you want, and it won't change the picture again and again and again. It is fixed in place. So there's our blur. I can just tap freely, show and hide, and nothing happens. But we can do better than this. When you see when I tap on the blur, it just snaps in. Tap again, it snaps out. Doesn't look great. We can ask SwiftUI to toggle the boolean with an animation, to animate going from true to false. Now in UIKit, this kind of thing was very, very tricky. You could animate like opacity and alpha value from 0 to 1 because there are intermediate values, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.9, 1.0. Booleans, you don't animate. They're either true or they're false. There's no intermediate values. But with SwiftUI, we can say, actually, when I modify this boolean, I want to wrap that inside a with animation block, which means, yes, flip the boolean from true to false, but animate any changes that occur as a result of that. Any UI changes should be animated as a result of that single boolean change. After I run the code again, we should see, hopefully, our fading and opacity will happen smoothly. Let's find out. Boom. Look at that. Super smooth now. Almost no work. Just saying, with animation causes the impact of your Boolean change to be animated. It's really, really nice. So, we now no longer have broken pictures. We now have animating of stuff. Let's now think how we can control this thing. How can we delete jokes? We haven't got an edit button anymore. We can't swipe to delete with the built-in table view stuff. We have to do a different kind of swipe to delete. In fact, we can recreate the swipe to delete effect from iOS. We can say, hey, just drag these things around with your finger and flip them off the screen and they'll go away. To do that, we're going to add another piece of state. We'll say at state private var drag amount set to be cgsize.0. There's no dragging for this view by default. Oleg, random numbers might repeat. They might absolutely might repeat. I'm going through 1 through 4. They can repeat freely. You get the same one of all 3 jokes very easily. Anyway, offset is 0 by default. And we can use that to move our whole VStack around. We can offset the whole VStack by saying .offset with the Y value of drag amount .height. So you use the amount of our drag to move the whole card up or down. Forget left and right, forget the x-axis, forget the width of the drag, just do up and down with the drag freely. And we can now modify that by attaching a gesture. Let me scroll down slightly, it makes more space. Attach a gesture to our cards. We can say there is a gesture, like that. Like there, I'll do a drag gesture. And drag gestures have a few things we care about, one of which is on changed. When this drag has changed, what do you want to do? As they're dragging in real time, as they're moving around, I'm going to say, well, assign to our drag amount property $0.translation. Now $0 is the drag data coming in. Where did it start? How far has it moved? Where might it end and so forth? We don't care where it started. We don't care about where it's going to end and so forth. We just care about how much it's moved. And so we'll say attach that whole thing to our drag amount like this. That's on change. As for on ended, Tiago asks how to remove a separate from a list. You currently can't, Tiago. You're stuck with it, I'm afraid. It's not very configurable, I'm afraid. We'll then say on ended. When this thing ends, what should we do? When they release their finger or thumb from the UI, what should happen? And what we'll say is, well, if our drag amount height is less than a certain amount, what do you think constitutes a delete? Trial and error, I found 200. If we go up more than 200 points up, it means delete. Otherwise, ignore it. We'll say delete this thing. Otherwise, if they haven't gone at least 200 points, I want to effectively assume it was an accident. It didn't go far enough, put it back to the starting point again. I'll say self.dragamount equals .0. Reset the dragging amount. SmartDog asks, when you tap, that's not affect the random value anymore. That's correct. We've made the random value once when the struct's made. Here. Here. On line 14. There we go. Made it a straight value all by itself once for each piece of our joke card. Have its own value permanently for the whole time that struct exists. It doesn't go away permanently. So it won't keep on changing picture as we drag around. Anyway. So now we're saying, if we've dragged at least 200 points up, delete the thing. We'll come back to that shortly. Otherwise, put the drag amount back to 0 again. I'll press Command R, see how that thing looks. It is unhappy. We have to accept the value coming in. Of course we do. The drag value, I'll just do value in. We can ignore it basically. We don't care. We'll think. Boom. Run the code again. So now I can drag this thing down. And down doesn't do anything. It'll just snap back to where it was. Same for a little bit up. Won't do anything. Go a long way up. It'll stay up. That's our delete this item code about to run. Delete this thing. And this will work for all our cards. And drag this thing down. It'll just snap back like that. Ignores you. Boom. Now, as you can see, it's not great UI. We can do better than that. We can actually attach an animation to this by saying our whole joke card has an animation of .spring, like that. Make the whole thing spring around. And just by doing that one extra line of modifier after the gesture, will cause our things to move around much more smoothly. Put it down, it'll just snap back smoothly and bounce around a little bit. Way, way nicer. Anyway, so, of course, what we really want is when you swipe up a certain amount, like up to here, that means delete. We want the thing to fly away like it would do in iOS and be removed from our manage object context. So it looks really, really nice. So to remove things from a manage object context, we go back to the environment again. I'll go up to the top here, add a at environment for our .manage object context. Boom, var mock, like that. And now, where we have our delete this thing code, where it's time to delete this card, I'm going to say there is an animation. An animation will start by saying, first, move our view way off screen. Way off screen. Jonas asks, why must random be state if it doesn't change? The problem is that it won't change, but SwiftUI will recreate the struct regularly. It will recreate it all the time. And so if you want to be able to have that persist across recreations of the struct, you've got to mark it at state. Anyway, first thing I'm going to do is move this view way off screen. Fly away, off like you get in iOS. So I'll say our drag amount is equal to CG size, width is 0, and height is minus 1000. Off screen, gone. And then, after a small amount of time, once the animation completes, I'll say dispatch queue dot main dot async after. The deadline being .now plus some amount of time. I'll say 0.3. Tushar, that is covered online in my book, SwiftUI by example. I'm not going to repeat it here. Go and read it online. After it's flown away somewhere, delete it. We'll do self.mock.delete self.joke. Remove our joke. And try, question mark, of course you can do try catch and should do, self.mock.save to save that change. I'm going to comment out the saving line. So we haven't got to keep on adding and removing jokes, otherwise it's quite tiresome. I'm sure we've had enough dad jokes as it is. With that in place, hopefully I can press Command R and we should get an app that actually works pretty well together. So I can drag down, nothing happens, drag up, away it goes. And the rest just sort of slide along to make space for when it went away. Automatically. It's really, really nice. With hard DNA code, we're saying, slide away and delete the thing from the manage object context. And of course, the UI to reload and it'll all shuffle along. But there's one more thing we can do here, and this is where it gets super nice. If you ever used Nick Lockwood's library for Objective-C called iCarousel or CoverFlow on the old iOS versions, you can do a very similar thing with SwiftUI. We can actually take our two VStacks here, and in between them, insert a new type called a geometry reader. And this thing is designed to tell you where you are in space or control how much space you have or need around the layouts. So I'll say geometry reader with our geometry coming in like that. I'll push our whole VStack into there. So our whole inner VStack is now inside that geometry reader like that. And now we can read the amount of space we have, read where we are on the screen and similar. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply one last transform to our card to make it rotate slightly using a rotation 3D effect, giving you a CoverFlow style effect or iCarousel if that's your era. Or to say there is a rotation 3D effect. And this thing takes an angle. How much do you want to rotate? I'm going to say I'll use dot degrees equal to minus double our position in the global UI space, wherever we are in the whole UI space. So I'll say minus double our geometry reader's frame in the global view space. Get the X position of that, not the Y or the max X, whatever, just the X position, where we are globally, X position, divided by 10. So get a little bit of it. 1/10 of our X position we'll use as our rotation. So it doesn't rotate massively, just a little bit gently. For the axis, it's going to ask you, do you want to rotate sort of this way or this way? You got to choose X, Y, or Z rotation. And I'll say the axis is going to be X is 0, Y is 1. So rotate around the Y coordinate. I imagine someone's put a pin through the Y, actually rotating around that instead. And Z coordinate is 0. Rotate only around the Y coordinate by a little bit of our X position. And now, when I press Command R, hopefully, we would see a gentle but a build error. What did I screw up? This, it's a closure now. Whoops, yeah, self.round number, my mistake. Boom. There are lots of closures in SwiftUI. You'll see a lot of those things. Anyway, Command R, one last run, because it is now 20 past 8. I do apologize. We should now see this effect. Get a lovely sort of 3D pan through like that. Beautiful. And when I delete one, shoop, in it comes. Shoop, in it comes. Basically free. I mean, it's ridiculous. If you ever used iCarousel, it's a lovely library by Nick. He's an expert at this core animation stuff. He wrote a book on it, in fact. But it's a lot of code. He put a lot of work into iCarousel. And you can see how remarkably easy it is to do with SwiftUI. Thanks to things like Geometry Reader and Rotation 3D Effect and much, much more. Anyway, that brings us to the end of our project. We've covered a heck of a lot. If you look at our list of stuff, you'll see we've gone through table views, navigation, core data, adding and deleting, Catalyst, native macOS, custom UI, and now gestures. There's all sorts in there. I hope this has been useful to you. You've learned a lot. Again, I'd like to say, if the video is useful, please, please, please do hit a like. It does help other folks find these videos, which helps encourage me to make more videos like this one. I will push the code to this for GitHub, so you can grab it from there and play around with it and do more. By all means, check it out, modify it, ship it. I don't care what you do, it's your code now. But it'll be on the Swift on Sundays GitHub repo, which I'll try and share with you actually as a whole. Where is that? It's like GitHub/2straws/Swift on Sundays, like that. Let me just check that's the correct URL. Boom, there we go. That's the URL there. I will paste it into the chat window. And you'll see all our previous projects there. And you'll see there'll be shortly 19 dad jokes will be there with that code. Go and grab it. Play with it. I can hang around. I know I've kept you a very long time. I do apologize. There's a lot in this project I want to get through. I want to really show you more than just, hey, it's a list. I want to do more than just that. We've done some real native macOS SwiftUI and similar. And don't get me wrong, I love SwiftUI tutorials that do have lists and navigation, but I want to do more than that here. So I apologize for being so long. Hopefully I've answered your questions so far. If I haven't, by all means, ask questions now. I can hang around, for another half hour if you have more questions. Let me know. I want to remind you, by the way, that tomorrow the 100 days of SwiftUI starts. And this is a free tutorial series for 100 days teaching you SwiftUI, starting tomorrow. And the first 15 days are going to be the Swift fundamentals, what are protocols, what are classes, what's inheritance, what's a nil coalescing operator, and so forth, and more. So that'll be there. But then after that, day 16 onwards, it's going to be all completely new code for SwiftUI. We're going all across SwiftUI for iOS in there for 85 days, including tests and more. Lots of brand new stuff. So check it out. Do sign up. It's free online. Just go to that site URL and let me know. All right. That's all I have for you here, but it's your chance to ask questions. So I'm going to have a sip of my wine so I can see if I can attract the dogs. Might take the bag for them perhaps. And yeah. By all means, if you have questions now, this is your chance to ask. Go ahead. Boom. Right. Questions. Can you enter the card on the screen? Yes, Ben, you can. Of course you can. It's honestly, you can position views wherever you want to. It's totally down to you. Using offset for position X and Y, using rotation effect or rotation 3D effect, you can do all sorts. You can position them wherever the heck you want to. It's totally down to you. We fixed our cards, by the way, at 300 width. So you can get your screen size, the geometry reader, subtract half of that from half of 300 to 150, and that's your center point there. So you can do that very easily if you want to. Hello, look, someone's giving you some treats. I forget who it was, but someone earlier gave you some treats. So come on, good girl. Come on, Aria. Where's Luna? Good girl. Luna, come on, you too. Luna, come on. Hey, no, you had one. Get down. Luna, come on. Luna, good girl. That's it. Good dog. Good dog. Anyway, Total Guy. Do you know that any way to access the always-on display in a third-party app on the watch in your own workout app? Always on display. To access, to read if it's always on? I don't know. I haven't tried it out yet. I've got a Series 5 here, but you notice it's turned off. I've turned off the always on, and it's been going all day so far, and it's lost about 20% of battery life. The battery life is way, way better with always on turned off. There's a Series 5 with always on turned off because the battery life is way better. Smilebot. For the 100 days of SwiftUI course, is it possible to take a week off? Yes, of course, take a week off. I want folks to come back regularly, to keep learning across an hour each day and no more, because it helps your brain learn in diffuse mode and focused mode. It's great. But you've got life, right? As John Lennon said, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. Go and have a holiday, go and have a vacation, just come back and catch up. Just don't take 5 weeks off because you'll be really, really far behind and you've forgotten a lot of stuff. What are some results to learn how to write performant Swift? Golly, that's a good question. I don't know. So, if you've been through Project 30 of Hacking with Swift, which is I think it was the last project in the original 100 Days of Swift, which is just /100 on the site. The last project there is Instruments, I believe, from memory. Yeah, the one here is Instruments. And it walks you through, here's some actual project which performs very badly. And you have to use instruments to find the problems and fix the problems and make it better. So that is a good example of how to write better code. It's not all there is to it. There's much more than that. And I've done whole talks on doing better, more performance Swift code. There's a lot to it, bluntly, and I'm not sure I can put you at one single resource for doing faster Swift. Conrad, I'm glad you liked it. MBVM, I guess that is the whole question. Can you do it? Of course you can do it. You can totally do it. it's down to you. You know, SwiftUI isn't MVC, clearly it's MV. There's no view controllers anymore. So if you want to wrap your model in a view model, of course you can. In fact, it's probably still a very good idea because it keeps your views small, which is always a good idea. So no, MVVM is not dead. I think it's as good as ever. One thing I would say, in fact, I'm surprised someone hasn't asked me already, how do you do coordinators in SwiftUI? Because folks who love the coordinator pattern in UIKit want to put that into SwiftUI, which is great. It shows they've had success with it. But honestly, it's not great right now. You know, I don't think coordinators sort of fit naturally the way SwiftUI is written. And so when folks try and squeeze coordinators into SwiftUI, they hit problems and it gets confused. So right now, I haven't seen anyone use them well. So I'm not recommending coordinators at this time. That will change at some point, I'm sure, because they have a lot of benefits still. But right now, it's not great. Endless Summer. You bought Power Pack and Platform Pack. Thank you very much for your support. Honestly, it's folks buying the bundles, buying books and similar, who help me, you know, do this for free. You know, I do a lot of free stuff. As much as I can, I do for free, because I know a lot of folks can't afford it. And folks who do buy books help support this free work, which I'm really, really grateful for. Thank you so much. Rob D. Martino says, why struct versus classes? So there are a few reasons for that, Rob. So classes use inheritance, which is often a great way of getting functionality very quickly, but they also cause problems. If you think about, for example, UI view has lots of properties attached to it, things like you can attach background colors to them, you can attach auto layout to them, you can attach whatever, right? They have all sorts of properties, and that's great. But then you look at something like UI stack view, which inherits from UI view and is a non-rendering UI view subclass, and yet still has a background color, because all subclasses of UI view have background colors. So even though stack views never draw, they can't draw, you can give them background color and it's ignored, it still gets one. So you get all this cruft thrown at you from inheritance, which sucks, right? It's bad for efficiency. Another problem with classes is they are reference types, which means they, if you have one object shared in many places, they all point to the same piece of RAM. When one changes it, they all change, which is problematic for following your code flow. And in particular for performance, classes, when you move them around or when you pass them into a function or similar, Swift has to silently generate what's called retain release code, memory management code using Arc behind the scenes. You pass it into a function, it will add a retain count so it doesn't get destroyed by accident while the function's running. It'll run the code of the function and then release the object again. And retain release, adding 1 or 0 to these retain counts is an atomic operation. You can't do it at the same time because you might, you know, collide and cause issues. And so it'll lock the RAM, add 1, unlock the RAM. So it'll do lock, unlock, lots and lots of times. So there's a number of reasons why classes are problematic. On the other hand, if you look at a Swift struct, we had this thing here, that's being passed in from elsewhere, that's being passed in from elsewhere. These three, that's a Boolean, that's an integer, and that's 2 CG floats. And that is all it is. That's the entire struct. A Boolean, an integer, and 2 CG floats. That is a simple value type. It can be stack allocated extremely efficiently. Now, if you look at instruments, you can look for leaks and allocations to spot what's slow and what's fast. It'll tell you how many times you allocate reference types, how many times you put things on the memory heap. It won't tell you how many times you stack allocate, because it's pointless. It's a simple integer decrement. It's extremely fast to do stack allocations. So there's no point. The structs here are ludicrously simple little beasts. There's no wasted memory. There's no locking for retain release code and similar. They're very, very thin and light. And that's, when we think about it, when we saw, before we had like the random number right in this image being used, and we tapped on the card, it toggled the blur, and the image would change. It was recreating the struct again and again and again with its new body every single time. If that was a class, that's to do all that allocation every single time, it'd be really, really bad. And particularly for some things like we have here the offset of our drag amount, right? When you're dragging around on an iPad Pro with 120 Hertz display, ProMotion display, 120 times a second, it will destroy this struct and recreate it, potentially. It's down to SwiftUI how many times it does it, but it'll recreate it constantly. As you're dragging it around, it'll change it constantly and throw it away, which for these simple structs is irrelevant. It'll do billions in a second without thinking about it, right? For classes, that's a serious issue. It'll be much, much slower. So I can absolutely see why I've chosen structs. You don't have to use structs. If you want to use classes, you can use classes. But they highly, highly recommend you use structs. Sorry, that was a very long answer for a very, very simple question. But there you go. Next up, we have, do you, given the, there's so many questions here. Right. Alex Paul, given the detailed view and an ad view that's presented modally, come back. Presented modally, how do you keep the state updated on a particular property for the given object? Ad view presented modally, how do you keep the state object? Are you asking? I think you're asking, Alex. How would we keep the state for the same object updated? Like if we had a detail view and add view, it's modally over it, showing the same thing. How to update them both? And the answer is using observed objects, which are non-trivial shared data types. You can create a class for user values or settings or whatever you want to store, right? And you can pass that around freely and share the same value in many places. When one of them changes, they'll all change, synchronize around the same value, which is very nice. You could also, actually, Alex, you were at the TrySwift live version of this talk when I dismissed the add view in a different way, because you can actually pass in a shared piece of state, use @state in one view and bind it to a different view, so you can toggle the same Boolean behind the scenes. Also works. I hope that was the right question I was answering. If not, please ask again with some clarification. Total Guy, Paul Hudson, do you think there'll be problems with SwiftUI not being adopted? So folks are, I think, incorrectly drawing parallels between SwiftUI and Swift. They're saying, listen, Swift was adopted very quickly, so SwiftUI was adopted very quickly as well. And honestly, that isn't the case. They're very, very different beasts. When Swift launched, it was already backwards compatible by one version. It shipped with iOS 8. It worked in iOS 7. So if you were an N-1 company, if you support latest and one before, you go Swift immediately, which is really nice. And secondly, Swift came out of the box with, not ideal support because they didn't have, Objective-C generics at the time, but it had support for UIKit, SpriteKit, SceneKit, core location. It all worked in Swift out of the box, right? So it was very, very fast to adopt Swift. SwiftUI is different. SwiftUI is only iOS 13. There's no iOS 12 support, and it only supports a subset of Apple's functionality. If you want to do map views, if you want to do collection views, if you want to do text views, you want to do text fields in alert controllers, you've got to do that by hand. And there's no built-in SwiftUI collection view. There's no built-in SwiftUI map view. No built-in SF Safari view controller wrapper in SwiftUI. So you haven't got the same level of coverage Swift had. So adoption will absolutely be slower for SwiftUI. The issue will be when iOS 14 launches. I mean, Apple aren't, let's face it, they're pretty predictable with their release numbers. Next year, Xcode 12, iOS 13, macOS 10.16, presumably across the board. They're going to hopefully say, and now here's collection view, now here's text view, and now here's other stuff. Hooray! Big cheers and clapping and whooping at dub. Will that then be gated to iOS 14? Or will they say, hey, by the way, this will actually be back compat to iOS 13? Now, if they can do the backwards compatibility story to iOS 13, it would really help. Because this time next year, folks will then say, okay, that's iOS 14 supports the stuff, iOS 13 also supports it, I can now use SwiftUI for my project. If they say, actually, we've done collection views, but it only works from iOS 14 onwards, then we've got the same problem yet again. Folks who want to support -1 or even -2, cracky, even -3 sometimes, they can't get on it for until iOS 17. iOS 17, it's like the distant future. But there you go. So I don't know, but it definitely will hold it back in the short term. But if you happen to be lucky enough to work at a company that does this stuff, awesome. Love it up, lick it up, enjoy it all you can, because you'll be able to have a real exciting ride on that front, I'm sure. Ahmed says, can I explain using init as a closure with map or flat map? I think what you're asking is when you're using a list of stuff, can you map to init or flap to init? Yes, you can. I'm epically guessing here. I guess you're doing something like func hello Ahmed. Ahmed, sorry. Let foo equals 1 2 3 dot flat map URL dot init. I think that's what you're saying. And so what's going to happen is it's going to effectively create URLs from these values, which of course aren't actual URLs in any way. Yeah, it might be slightly more likely to work. It'll basically say, it's equivalent of saying something like this: let result equals, var result equals an array of URLs. Boom, and then for item in this lot, like that. Boom. If let URL equals URL with the string being item, then result.append URL. That's what it's doing. It's just obviously a substantially nicer way of writing it. I think that's a question. Again, I'm totally guessing at questions here. There's a bit of a lag on that front, so I'm sorry if I got it wrong. Oscar, so enums, Oscar's question is, what are the issues with core data enums? And it's pretty simple, actually. Enums weren't really a thing in Objective-C. They had NSEnum macros around it to try and make it not so awful, but enums, the way we think of them in Swift, are not a thing in Objective-C. SwiftUI only works with Swift, and that's not Apple being annoying or trying to force people onto Swift. It's as simple as they want to leverage all the functionality of Swift. And in fact, if you think about it, so much stuff here, like property wrappers, like opaque return types, like implicit returns and similar, are only available in Swift 5.1. If you go to like my site here, what's new in Swift.com, this lists out, you just choose your Swift version here and then choose what you want to show up to here. It kind of lists the changes they've made to it. And you will see this kind of thing, that's a key SwiftUI feature. We haven't got to put return here, and same as here, we haven't got to do return vstack, which is what's actually happening behind the scenes. It implicitly has that. Or return types, we can say some view and not just view. So even Swift itself really wasn't able to do SwiftUI until 5.1. It's a lot of things in 5.1 just for SwiftUI. So Core Data doesn't have a good mapping to Swift enums because it wasn't designed for it. It's designed for Objective-C, where you had simple types. You look at our model again. The options you can choose from aren't great. Undefined, you can do it yourself if you want to. Various integers, decimal, double float, string, boolean, binary data, blah, blah, blah. So you could do something around that if you wanted to, but it's a pain in the backside, and it's not much fun on the live stream. So yeah, strings. Hold still. I was up to, it's all flown ahead. Brilliant. I was here. Badray does not agree with me. You can use inherent extensions. Of course you can. Of course you can. But you still have classes. You still have the memory allocation, the sharing of stuff, the memory locking, and more. So it's not as efficient by a long, long way. And it gets folks in the right mindset. Yes, performance matters, but it's getting them in the right mindset. This is going to be tossed away. Think in terms of inert views. Sharing slides, a good idea. I'll look into that. In fact, realistically, Mohammed, at some point, hopefully soon, the short version of this talk, this is the long version of my Try Swift talk. The short version was 25 minutes in theory. I think it was actually way over, like 30-something minutes. But this was 2 hours, 20 minutes, right? We'll never fit on stage. You'll see roughly the same slides in the Try Swift version, just with me talking over them. So as soon as Try Swift publish their video, I recommend you go and watch that because it'll be very, very fast and exciting. Bagyash asks, scroll view to scroll. I don't think that exists in SwiftUI at this time. Salah, will there be a SwiftUI version of Unwrap? Maybe at some point, but right now, no. It'd be a lot of hassle right now, so I have no interest in it. This is Alex clarifying his question from 10 minutes ago. Sorry, but perhaps I answered it. I'm not sure. Julio asked about background color on SwiftUI buttons in WatchOS. I'm afraid I don't know. That's a very specific question, so I'll have to check into that. Mark asks, how does it play with ARKit? It does not play with ARKit. It's a whole other thing. Do your own ARKit. in regular imperative code. There is no SwiftUI kit just yet. Oscar, do you think there'll be advancements in SwiftUI during the year, only at next WWDC? So we already know for sure, iOS 13.1 changes some things. You'll have noticed, no one asked, fortunately, because you're all too nice. If I run my code again, you'll see our layout, hopefully. I see this joke view here, and it's got 3 lines here and then 2 lines of the punchline. And I've said this thing should have no more than 10 lines to the joke and no more than 10 lines to the punchline. If I remove those 2 lines, I'll just comment them out like that. Boom. So they have no line limit, which in SwiftUI means as many lines as you want. 1 line, 0 lines, 1,000,000 lines. Just keep on going. Press Command R again. Let's see how it looks. And okay, now it works. Hooray! Half the time, this will utterly fail. And now it's working. Yay. Let's try a different font. This is obviously Xcode final now, not one of the late betas. I've changed the font slightly. Will it still work or will it not work? Let's find out. Oh, it still works. Damn you, Xcode. That's too good for me. This often fails, was my point. I know for sure that things that previously failed now often don't fail, particularly text wrapping. Not all of them. Someone would say there are still some bugs in it, but many of the text wrapping problems I hit in SwiftUI GM, like final Xcode 11, have got better in 13.1. So they are improving things. What we don't know yet is whether Apple will gate those changes. Because in UIKit, if you do a thing in UIKit, it works a particular way. For example, if you build your app against iOS 12 SDK or 11.10.9, whatever, and you get the token through for your push message, and you say, here's my data, give it to me as a string, please, by using description, you get back the string of the push token. In iOS 13, you don't. You don't get it back anymore. You get something else back, and it's going to break apps that compile against iOS 13. But there's a version gate in UIKit. There are many of these, but it's a new version gate saying, if I'm iOS 12 or earlier, return the old behavior, otherwise return the new behavior to keep these apps working correctly. Now, what we don't know is, when you have a SwiftUI bug, where the UI is wrong, there's a SwiftUI problem, will that just magically correct itself in 13.1, or will they version gate it? Force old broken behavior for iOS 13.0, use new good behavior for 13.1. I don't know. We're going to find out like imminently when it ships. So I don't know is the answer. SmartDog wants a quick way to explain ViewBuilder. Whew! ViewBuilder is a quick way to explain function builders. Okay, so iOS 5.1 changes lots of things for SwiftUI. Lots of things for SwiftUI. And it's very interesting. If you go back through in here, go to like github.com/apple/swift-solutions/proposals. There we are, boom. And look at the ones that landed in Swift 5.1, or the ones they wanted to land in Swift 5.1. You can kind of retroactively do some detective work to see SwiftUI coming, right? For example, SE250. They want to have a style guide for Swift. Why, just for dub, do they want to have a style guide for Swift? And the answer is they now have a drag and drop UI editor for SwiftUI. You can basically click around in this preview to make your UI, and it writes Swift code for you. What Swift code should it write? Let's do a style guide Swift code. So you can see why they want to have that. Same for things like eliding a comma. If you want to have an array, so you could do A, B, C across new lines like this, but having to have commas in there. And my understanding is the hope was that was going to be SwiftUI. To have no commas in here. Now, eventually they found a different approach, which is function builders. That made it through. But they added function builders as, I think it was plan B, basically. They had other plan, didn't happen. And so function builders landed in discussion. It was announced the same day as SwiftUI. Was it June 3rd this year? It was like, hey, we announced SwiftUI. All right, there's this cool new stuff with function builders. And everyone's like, what? And even today, function builders haven't gone through evolution. If you look in the proposal list, you'll see there is no function builder here. It hasn't gone through yet, even though Swift 5.1 has shipped with function builders. And you can make them, you can say, @ function builder like that. And the underscore means this is really, really private. Don't do this. And function builders are a way to effectively allow you to make code like SwiftUI. So here, this Z stack has a linear gradient, then a scroll view, then a button. And we've listed them out 1, 2, 3. There's no comma between them. They're just thing, then thing, then thing. And SwiftUI is able to put that together into one finished result. And that's through function builders. And on top of that is a particular function builder called a view builder, which is our Z stack here. And that is what gives us the ability to do V stacks and H stacks and for eaches and similar. They are function builders behind the scenes to bring many views together into one view. It's complicated. I can give you actual code examples if you desperately want of your own custom view builders, but broadly you're not going to want to. Again, there's actually in the 100 SwiftUI, we're going to do a custom view builder in there because I want to show folks what's happening behind the scenes. Because so much of SwiftUI, I remember DubDub, folks saw SwiftUI, and you're seeing at fetch request, at state, at environment, like what the heck does that do? You're seeing $signs everywhere. What the heck do those $signs do? As well as V stacks, Z stacks, sheets and so forth. So you've got this whole new UI library and a whole new Swift terminology at the same time to think about, which is hard. And so people at DubDub were understandably a bit foxed by this. So in the 100 SwiftUI series, which I hope you all follow, we're going to look at exactly how view builders work and make our own view builder so you can see what's happening behind the scenes to try and demystify what's really happening. We can't do everything. There's some things that only SwiftUI can do because they're private implementation details. We can do a lot of things, and I want to show it to you what it is. Anyway, sorry, another long answer for a very simple question. Kevin Romano, buy iOS 17 and have Swift UX Max. Very possibly, yes, that'd be entertaining, I agree. Salah, would I recommend using UIKit for new projects for now? Yes, I would. UIKit, UIKit's been around for a long time. If you look at what got announced at DubDub this year, it was huge, right? Yes, obviously, SwiftUI kind of swept the table quite a lot with some of the things, but there were some astonishing features in the rest of Apple's platforms this year. Things like compositional layouts for collection views. They're beautiful. They are things of beauty. I'm doing a talk in Krakow next week, I want to say, maybe week after next, called OMG Collection Views. That's the title of my talk. It's all about collection views being awesome again because they're super cool now. But they're really cool, but they're not in SwiftUI. And so they wouldn't be doing all this great new UIKit stuff if UIKit was obsolete, right? It's not obsolete. It's going to have a long lifespan ahead of it. We'll probably see more things coming next year and even the year after for UIKit that may or may not come to SwiftUI. So there's lots still to come in SwiftUI. There's lots of money in in UIKit, lots of money in UIKit, tens of millions of lines of code in UIKit. All apps to date are written in UIKit. All enterprises have support more than -1 or -2 iOS versions. All use UIKit for a few years yet. If you hit a problem in SwiftUI, you can Google it. You might find my site. You might find nothing at all. Good luck with that. You'll almost certainly find something with UIKit. So it's a pain in the backside right now sometimes, SwiftUI, because it is also new. Yes, you can follow my 100 Days SwiftUI online or my online book, SwiftUI by Example, which has got stacks and stacks of examples of code. If you haven't been to there, let me show you that real fast. If you go to Learn and just choose SwiftUI by Example, this is like 325 pages of free SwiftUI questions and answers, including like a big long tutorial at the beginning you can walk through, and way more. Lots of actual code with videos and so forth. Anyway, it's all there to go and look at, and you might find that, but otherwise it's a bit annoying right now because there aren't many answers. Which design pattern do I prefer? I honestly think that's an odd question. I don't think it's as simple as like I want to prefer this one because that's odd. I use whatever's appropriate. Design patterns are shared language for ideas, like for concepts. When I say let's use a builder pattern, or let's use a Hollywood pattern, or let's use something else, you go, oh yeah, of course Hollywood pattern, that's a good idea because of A, B, and C. You know what I mean by that, and we can implement it immediately and discuss the pros and cons. Same way I say, let's use generics here, or let's use a protocol here. You can say, oh, I know what that means. So it's just a language of describing things, and I wouldn't necessarily say, yes, always use this type. That doesn't make sense. I mostly use coordinators, but I wouldn't always use them. That'd be weird. Total Guide, correct. Yes, they have not figured out how function builders should work yet. So it's sensible to hide it, I agree. And I look forward to seeing them. It's one of those things where we have to use them in SwiftUI, but I wouldn't recommend folks actively choose to use them themselves, like create their own one. Function builders, that is. View builder, maybe, but not function builder. A bit like auto closures in Swift. You can do it. Should you do it? Yeah. Ben, could I do a video on sign with Apple in SwiftUI? And also do the one app works on all platforms? I could. Do I have time to? I'm not sure. Probably not. It's not that hard. Sign with Apple is actually very easy. In fact, I'd say it's almost trivial. It's like one button and a callback. Kirsty asks, is the 100 days SwiftUI following on SwiftUI by example? No, it's all new. It's 85 days of all new projects, all new challenges, all new tests online. It's all going to be new. It is very unlikely, I warn you now, it's very unlikely I have time to do videos, I'm afraid, because I'm speaking at 2 events in the next 2 weeks. I should be doing those preparations instead of doing videos. So I'll do certainly new stuff, guaranteed, but probably won't have time to do videos as well as writing. So we'll see. Funky, how to add menus to SwiftUI Mac projects? I'm afraid I don't know. I haven't looked at that yet. I've done it with UIKit Catalyst stuff, but not with SwiftUI Mac yet. I can look into that and let you know. For a new project, would recommend to wrap UIKit in SwiftUI or vice versa. So if you wanted to use, if you really want to use SwiftUI now, you want to go SwiftUI all the way until you hit something you can't do in SwiftUI, which will be about an hour into the project, probably. Like, there's one thing, and it's like, oh, it's just one line of code in UIKit, and it's really, really hard with SwiftUI. And there's a whole section here in by example about how to wrap a custom UI view for SwiftUI. And it's not very hard. As you can see, this is wrapping a UI text view here. It's not very hard, but it gets so painful, and you end up wrapping a lot of things. And if you find you're doing it all the time, like, honestly, as an exercise to the reader, go and try and wrap UI collection view, and you'll realize it's extremely painful. I'm looking forward to Apple doing that for me, quite frankly, because it'd be way nicer for them to do that hard work for me. And it's like, previously, folks doing RX Swift actively, great, respect to them. It wasn't easy. There was a lot of ramp up because you were kind of fighting against UIKit, bluntly. And obviously, Apple owns UIKit. They can just rewrite UIKit to work with reactive stuff, which is exactly what they did. So until they rewrite UI collection view to play ball nicely with SwiftUI, it ain't going to happen. Now, I should say that obviously, until recently, most of Apple didn't know about SwiftUI. Many folks did, maybe 50 folks, maybe more, I'm not sure, but not all of them by a long, long way knew about SwiftUI. And now they all know about SwiftUI. So I imagine, or I'd like to think that the Maps team, the Photos team, the Safari team, whatever, are all thinking, how could I wrap my component for SwiftUI? So when that ships, and I hope that is before DubDub, in the incremental 13.2 and similar, we'll get more and more interesting components to work with, like a map kit, for example. Will be really, really nice, done for us from Apple. Be lovely. So we'll see. So anyway, that could be before DubDub, hopefully. We'll find out, obviously, in the coming months. Because 13.1 is really close. 13.1 is like 2 days away already. It's remarkable how close it is already. I haven't seen that in a long time. Jesus asks, what do I think will happen with storyboards and zibs? Nothing. I mean, they're great. They're still good. I use storyboards all the time. It certainly ends the really annoying battle by people coming and saying, no, storyboards are for noobs. I can point out, now, this person's, worked at Apple 20 years and uses storyboards or uses zibs. If you want to go and tell them they're a noob, go for it, but it ain't going to end well. Helpfully, SwiftUI ended that particular war by making it all sort of syncing up with code. So we'll see. Ben Mitchell remind me of Tom Scott. Okay, cool. Satyasin, you're from Froome. Great. Froome. I love Froome. Froome's beautiful. Yeah, fellow Somerset boy. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not on cider. I am on wine, but I am a local lad. Julio's giving up on SwiftUI. That's a shame. Yeah, WatchKit. You know, honestly, I'm one of the few folks who actually really enjoys WatchKit. I thought it was brilliant. I made some great apps with WatchKit. I really enjoyed it. How simple it was to make great stuff. And weirdly, they took out things like relative sizes from SwiftUI because it would have mapped directly to the WatchKit's relative sizes, and they've taken it out, which is really annoying. So you got to do maths like with geometry reader and so forth by hand, which is silly and annoying. Anyway. Dennis White, see you again next Sunday. Maybe, I don't know. I need to prioritize writing the final versions of my projects for the 100 Days SwiftUI because I want to make sure they're very good. I haven't got time to do videos, I don't think, like I said, but I do want to make sure the projects themselves are the best I can, so they stand test of time for a long time. So my focus is there right now, but also I've got to be doing these 2 presentations for Krakow and Italy. I'm going to Pragma in like 3 weeks. So I'm doing talks about SwiftUI and collection views. So I'm not sure I have enough time to do another Swim Sundays for a little while, but I will be picking up again once they're out of the way. Oscar, shortcut to NFC. Maybe NFC, honestly, it's so easy. So easy. Because Core NFC doesn't give you much control. You have to use their UI and it just presents as, yeah, here's the code. It's trivial. The problem is most folks haven't got anything to scan. So you can look around something and like, what's got an NFC? You know, not a lot. So it's a bit annoying right now. So I did NFC in Advanced iOS Volume 2, I think. And it was like, yeah, what should we scan? And I happen to have a Google Cardboard, you know, the old knockoff AR thing that had a scannable thing inside, but there wasn't a lot around with embedded NFC things at home. So maybe anyway. Smart Dog Reality Kit, cool. Reality Kit, I haven't had time to look at it. It looks like it's the future, quite frankly. Everything I've seen about it looks like Scene Kit's going to die. Sprite Kit might die as well, I'm not sure. Reality Kit's going to be the future. They're going to do a massive thing with that because it's so nice and it's going to do so much more than it does right now. So we'll see. SwiftUI work for barcode. Not really a question there. Certainly I intend one of the projects for the 100 days to do QR codes with SwiftUI. So you can, you know, show your barcode or scan a barcode or something like that. I'm not sure what I'll do yet, but we'll see. Yeah, but barcodes are just pictures, right? The images of stuff. So it doesn't matter. Anyway, that is now 9 o'clock. I've kept you an obscene 3 hours. I apologize for that. Hopefully next one will be shorter. We covered a lot of ground and there were lots of questions. So hopefully it'll be useful. We'll see. Anyway, I'll be around another 5 minutes, folks. If you have questions, it's your last chance to ask. I'll get onto them shortly. I'm going to include Core Data plus iCloud. Probably not. I wasn't planning to. I did iCloud in Hacking with Swift. And actually it changed in iOS 13 to be better again. Maybe is the answer. I wasn't planning to, just because I have to draw a line somewhere. 100 days is limited in what you can actually do. So, yeah. I want to try and pick the most applicable stuff. And iCloud hasn't really picked off. It hasn't really picked up very well for some reason. It hasn't really taken off. A bit like SceneKit. SceneKit's brilliant, but it never really took off. Ivan, hope all is well here. My kids are in bed, hopefully ready for school. I'm going to finish this and go and play some Untitled Goose Game for a while. I need a horrible goose. Everything is good here. Smongo, I'm glad you enjoyed the 3 hours. It's been quite a while. Right, folks, last chance to ask questions. I will sign off. And if you want to see me again, you can grab me on Twitter. I am 2straws on Twitter. Boom, let me show you my name. There I am on Twitter. You can, by all means, follow me there or whenever you want to. Ask questions there. Right, now you ask those questions. Boom, all at once. Hey, Josh, how do you learn Swift? Boom, I have a completely free online course for you. You go to my homepage, which is here. You press Learn. You press Start here. Everything on this page lists like free, 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 free. It's all free, 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 all the way down free. Do not pay for stuff. Go here, choose the very first thing, this thing here. This thing is the best starting point for newcomers. The 100 Days of Swift. Press start reading, and it'll teach you Swift day by day, all broken down, lots of videos, lots of interactive tests to make sure you're learning correctly. You make tons of real projects. You learn things like Codable and GCD and user defaults and Sprite Kit and core graphics and core image and map kit and way, way more. It's a huge undertaking. It's all online, free of charge. Go there to learn Swift. Adam, no, I don't work at Apple. I've got no idea why they make their choices. Camille, thank you very much for the donation. Could I teach you how to make a proper network manager? Maybe. It's not that hard. I did a video on it previously. Which one was it with SwiftUI? It was we just posted. It was called Cupcake Corner. You look at my YouTube channel, YouTube/Paul Hudson. I haven't done it again for the pre-release. I might do it again as one of the 100 Days projects perhaps, because this is using slightly older SwiftUI code. But it's one of these maybe, or no, it's here. No, I don't even remember. It's one of these things here. SwiftUI. One of these things here will list how to do it, and it's not that hard. It's called Cupcake Corner, and there it is. URL session. That's the one there. Boom. That one. Number 6 on my playlist right now, and that goes through how to do network calls with URL session. Will 100 Days cover an example of CoreML? Yes, it will. Absolutely. There's a project I did, I loved, which was called this one here, a CoreML app. Again, it's out of date. That was recorded before the GM. I think it was recorded on beta 1. So I might try and redo that one as a text project for the final version of SwiftUI. So it's up to date forever. Because once it's in a book, I update it all the time with new versions of stuff. So yes, I want to put that project into the 100 Days somewhere, because it's lovely, because it's CoreML's great fun to work with. And having that alongside SwiftUI is just beautiful, quite frankly. Mark, no longer need to do self weekend. Well, there isn't issue inside a struct, and there never was, because week has no meaning. You can't weekly hold a struct. It's not a thing you can do. But obviously, it's still required for using classes, so it's not that it's no longer needed. It's just not needed in that particular situation. Heard a rumor that SwiftUI is inspired by Facebook's iOS architecture. So, I mean, it's most things in some respects are inspired by reactive coding full stop, which is not new. It's actually quite old. React itself, which I highly recommend Swift folks look at because it's great fun, is a JavaScript framework from Facebook for doing websites in JavaScript reactively, and it's beautiful. They do a lot of great things. And if you combine it with Babel or Babel and Webpack, you can use super modern JavaScript, cross-compiled or transpiled down to manky old JavaScript. So you're writing nice code, and it's all reactive. It's all very nice. Check it out. Have a look. And you'll of course see some similarities because it's reactive coding. It's the same thing. The ideas are the same. So yeah. Are your books updated? Yeah. So this is really annoying, J. Ross. I update them every time for stuff. So if I go to like Swift design patterns. Apple books, Paul Hudson. Right, that'll probably find the thing. There we go. Boom. And you click on that thing, and here's my book. And hopefully on here somewhere, I don't know. No, it doesn't even mention. I do this thing saying like, what's new in this book? Oh, is it Swift 5? Yeah, so it's Swift 5 eventually. But somewhere, some versions are cached saying Swift 3. Even for Swift 5 and Swift 4 and Swift 5.1 and so forth, they still say Swift 3. So the original description from a long time ago, which is really, really annoying. I don't know what to do. I might just contact them and ask them to flush their cache something, because I do update all these books, always, free of charge on Gumroad and Apple Books as part of my lifetime update guarantee. Yeah, so super quality, that example there, Vlastimir, was SwiftUI. I'd love for that to be in 100 days. So we'll see. I want to see if I can squeeze it in there. We'll see. You just joined the stream. Welcome. I'm sorry we've finished the project. It was really amazing project. I loved it really much. Sorry, a bit late for that now. Yes, 3.5 stream. I apologise again. 100 Swift, yes, please. Yes, M7MD, the 100 Days of Swift. This thing here, hackerswift.com/100 is my #1 best way of learning Swift. Not only do you get all intro to Swift and all intro to iOS, but all these things come with tests, testing your work. So you press on test, and it'll ask you questions about what you learned. Is this true, or is this valid code or not valid code? And you answer it and it'll say, oops, that's not correct. This thing, yada, yada, yada. So it's telling you what you're right and what's wrong. So you get tests to prove you know stuff. Plus there are stacks and stacks of videos here. And I've recorded so many videos for every one of these things, walking through exactly what's in there as well. And there's even like a word search to test your knowledge and so forth. And it's really highly interactive way of learning Swift and UIKit. And it's completely online, completely free. So go to that URL to learn Swift. Also, by the way, I do recommend my app. If you go to Learn and press Get the iOS app, it'll direct you to Unwrap, which is free on the App Store. You get all the same videos, all the same tests, and many more bonus tests to get right on your iPhone, interactively, free of charge. There's no in-app purchases on the App Store, so just go to Unwrap and get that at the App Store. It's very recommended. Anyway, do I have any tutorials for learning watchOS? I've got a whole book on watchOS. You go to Store, go to Browse, you scroll down for watchOS. So that's ProSwift, Design Patterns, macOS, watchOS. Boom. This thing here builds, I think, it's 12 projects for watchOS 5, including as games. There's a complication here. There's how to do user input. There's internet-related stuff. There's more. It's really, really packed with stuff. So recommended. Description for the app. Yeah. So it's go to like here. Link to it there. That's where the app is. So I've got a whole book on watchOS. Honestly, I wrote lots of watchOS code. It's so much fun. In fact, I'm one of the few folks who's probably written a watchOS sprite kit game. It's so much fun. Recommended very much. I enjoy watchCode a lot. And it's a shame because SwiftUI is better in some respects and worse in other respects, which is really annoying. Anyway. Do I have a machine learning book in Swift? No, I don't. But I do have Practical iOS 12 and Advanced iOS 2. Both cover machine learning. Here. This one here goes we go really deep into exactly how Core ML works in here, explaining exactly what they're doing behind the scenes. You know, because you can get confused with linear regressors or similar, and there's no need to. You know, so explaining what a random forest is and similar. It's all in there in detail. So go and check that out. So, I think that's all your questions. I have linked to everything. I've answered the how do I learn Swift question a great deal. I think that's everything. If it's not, grab me on Twitter. I also hang around on email at paul@hackingwhatswift.com. There's even a Slack group linked to on the homepage here. You'll see like, where is it? Newsletter, Slack group. You can join our Slack group. There's a #100 channel on there. If you're following 100 Days of Swift, all the 100 Days of Swift UI, you can go there and ask questions, and folks will help you out interactively. So I recommend the Slack group very highly. Will there be a Black Friday sale? Almost certainly. Almost certainly. Yes. Here's a way to see what's new. So on the homepage now, you'll see it lists the 3 most recent articles here on the homepage. And below that it's like the top most recent 15 or 10 or so, a piece of example code. So this is a knowledge base that flows in there newest first. So go to the homepage, you'll see the most recent news stories and most recent example code. And when something else happens, like 100 Days Swift launches tomorrow, there'll be a news story, bang, top of the thing saying 100 Days Swift UI launched today, go and join. Also there's bar at the top here saying this thing starts tomorrow. So I do try a number of ways to help folks find what's new. But it's not easy because the site's huge. The site's so big now, which is great. Folks love it. But yeah, also the search is good too. You recommend a search. You type in, navigation view without Q, and you'll get back your search things. You know how to push things, how to build a menu, tips and tricks, and so forth. Do that. And actually, a cool thing at the site is you can actually now go to hackingwhatswift.com/something like UI table view. Controller, and it will redirect you to the search automatically for that, which is really nice. And of course, you can add spaces if you want to have like hackingwhatswift.com/refactor view controller with spaces. It's fine; it'll just figure it out and show you the results straight away. So hope that helps you find stuff on the site more easily, because there is so much content on the site. And of course, I'm about to add a lot more with the 100 days of SwiftUI. Anyway, it is now 10 past 9. I've been here 3 hours and 10 minutes. You've been extremely patient. Thank you for coming. Thank you for telling others about it. Thank you for liking this live stream. All those things help more folk discover these live streams, which in turn help me want to do more live streams. Because if I only see a handful of folks set up, I'm like, well, it isn't really worth it, and don't do it again. When it looks like we had a high of 279 people, that's very, very good. That makes me want to do more. So please like the video, tell your friends, recommend it, watch the stream, and I'll see you at the next Swift on Sundays, which might be next weekend, but probably not. Probably after Pragma and after Krakow, so in like 3 weeks' time or so. Anyway, thank you for coming. I'll see you at some point in the future. And don't forget to go to the 100 days of SwiftUI, sign up, and enjoy starting tomorrow. It's going to be great, great fun. Take care.